IB Nation, welcome back to another edition of the Irish Breakdown Podcast. That's Trevor Trowbridge. I'm Brian Driscoll, and we are here to talk about the Notre Dame position groups now post-spring, Trev. We did something a few weeks ago before the Jersey scrimmage where we kind of said, hey, look, we've only seen a couple practices. This is where we feel about this team right now. So we ranked the position groups on both sides of the ball. Quarterback, running back, wide receivers, tight ends, O-line. Defensively, we went D-ends, D-tackles, linebackers, corners, safeties. And I said, based on where these teams are right now, where these units are right now, so with guys out injured, with, you don't have some freshmen on certain position groups, you don't have some transfers here yet, here's where we are with this football team. And so what we said was what we would do is we would do a post-spring breakdown after the Jersey scrimmage and after the blue gold game before we get to the summer. So we're going to still look at what we know about this team right now. And right now, Malachi Fields isn't on the team yet. And Dallas Golden's not on the team yet. Mark Zachary's not on the team yet. Chris Burgess isn't on the team yet, for example. So there are some guys that came back late spring from injury that kind of impacts things a little bit. There's been some guys that jumped in the portal. There could possibly be, I expect there to still be some portal departures, but who knows now at this point in time, especially with the uncertainty from the House settlement. So we're going to kind of what we know of the team today, April 24th, and who we know is for a fact on the team and right now. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to rank them offense, defense, 5 through 1, and have some fun with it, Trev, because we were contemplating, should we do the show? And so I did my 5, you did your 5. We compared them to see if, look, if it's the same rankings, it's kind of like, well, what's the point? Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show. Nothing's changed. Have a good rest of your day. We'll talk to you guys later. We'll do some rankings before the season. That wasn't the case, Trev. There were some changes in our rankings. And although while we have similar rankings to each other, there were, on both sides of the ball, position groups that we aren't the same on this time, whereas last time we were, I believe, the same on all 5. So we're going to have some fun today, really breaking it down and looking at it and saying, hey, this is where how we feel about this team. This is where things stand right now before the reinforcements show up. So I'm looking forward today, Trev.
When we sent each other our lists, I'm happy that there were some things that we didn't have in common, especially after we had identical lists in the start, because one, that leaves for really good content, really good discussion on today's show, but two, it kind of shows on a smaller scale how some people can interpret different things that happen in practice on a different level. Now, with that being said, Brian and I talked before the show, and it was like the groups that we didn't have in common, there was a lot of thought put behind it, and so I'm excited to jump into it today. There's going to be a lot of stuff that you say today that, shocker, I'm probably going to agree with, and where your rankings fall, vice versa. So it's going to be fun to talk about today, man. It's going to be really fun.
It is, and we'll begin, Trev, by looking at the offense and the defense. But before we kind of dive into it, I did want to spend a couple minutes talking about the team overall, and where we see things, how we feel about things overall, and kind of looking at it, and as sort of a preface to the breakdown, because when you do a ranking 1 through 5, or 1 through 10, first to last, best to worst, whatever, there's always going to be somebody that's last. And as we were kind of going through these rankings, it's kind of like there's a position group that I'll discuss on offense that went down all the way to the bottom. And it's not so much that unit is bad or got worse. It's that I'm more confident in other units now more so than I was then. And it's kind of interesting. I did this ranking one time with Lou Emoji when we were doing a podcast together, the late, great Lou Emoji. And we'd get kind of the bottom 3 or 4 position groups, and we just kind of look at each other as we're like prepping for the show, like, this is going to be interesting, like how this pans out. Like this could end up being a major problem for this football team. And it is kind of interesting to look at this team now, Trev, and we're like, God, I almost don't want to even do the rankings because it's going to come across as like this is a problem, when in reality, it's really something that you're excited about. And this position group happens to be missing more of its top players right now. And you look at it now, it's like the 5s, the 4s, you're like, but these are areas where I think they're going to be really good and where some of their better players are. And I think it just speaks overall, Trev, to just the health of this football team, from a not like physical health, but just talent health, depth health, and just where the overall roster is right now. It just speaks volumes to it. And yeah, like I was doing, so I'm doing the preview for the Athlon Sports College Football Preview magazine. So I'm writing that again, which I'm super fired up about. And I have to do a 2-deep and just kind of give your best guess at a 2-deep. And I'm looking, I'm like, good Lord, how do I leave that guy off? How am I supposed to leave that guy off? Like, I can't, like, can y'all make it a 3-deep for Notre Dame? I know you're not doing that for any other team in this, but can we do it? And it just kind of speaks to just how deep this football team is. And then I almost kind of forgot about certain guys that are coming back. Like, I almost like kind of left Ashton Craig off the list. I almost left Boubacar Traore off the list because you're like, oh, wait, these guys are going to be here, Jalen Stroman. And you're like, man, this is going to be really fun. But that was the challenge with this, Trev, is it used to be kind of easy. You knew who the best group was. You knew who the kind of the two worst groups were. And then you just had to figure out a couple in between. Now it's like, boy, I feel like, do I really want to put this group last? And it just speaks to just how strong this roster is, but also how quickly they've gotten here.
Yeah, I think that's really well said, man. The way, and I don't know if you did the same. I have an inkling that you did. But when I moved groups up or down on my list, if a group moved down, that's not so much they performed poorly, so I'm moving them down. It's just that another position group outperformed, I guess, if that makes sense. It's not so much me moving a specific group down, it's moving other groups above them. I know it's kind of two different ways to look at it, but that's how I viewed it. I never looked at any one of the 10 position groups that we looked at, 5 on offense, 5 on defense, and said, ooh, yeah, they just sucked, so I'm going to bump them down. It's obviously, well, this position group really played well between the Jersey scrimmage and the blue gold game. State of the Union today, I'm moving them up. And that's just kind of how it falls. I think of it in rankings where, like, sometimes in the AP poll, you'll see a team go from 3rd to 4th after winning. And it's like, well, what happened? It's like, well, the team in 4th place beat the number 5 team in the country.
And by 3 touchdowns.
Literally. Yeah. And then you were in 3rd place, but you beat a 3-3 team by 28. Your win wasn't bad. There was just one that was more impressive. And that's how I viewed how I made these rankings.
So, Trevor, we're going to jump into our rankings now. We're going to start with the offense. Here's what I need from y'all in the chat, though. Number one, we will be doing a mailbag today. So if you guys have some questions, and there's already 27, so I can't promise that we're going to get to whatever your mailbag questions are if you put new ones. But we'll try, because if it's something that's interesting and you get a new one in, we'll get there. If you want to throw a super chat in there, obviously that gets bumped up all the way to the top of the rankings. But the other part of it is, Trev, is we want you all to talk about what your rankings are. So some of you put your 10. We're not doing 10 together. We'll we'll do that at the end, which we did last time. We'll do that at the end. But what we want to see from you guys is, what is your 5? So we go 5 to 1. What is your 5? What is your top 5 rankings? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. When you talk about your position groups, and we'll start with the offense. So we want to hear from you all kind of what your 5 are: quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, O-line. And then when we get to defense, we'll talk more about that, Trev, because I want to hear from that. And I'm curious what you guys think about our list as well, because it was not as easy as I think it was last time. Like, I kind of felt, and that's why I think we have a difference of opinion this time, is because it's not so cut and dry like it was last time. And I think that kind of factors into it. So we're going to get started, Trev, and I'm going to have you, we'll kind of show you guys our list. So you can see, Trevor, there we go. So that's our list. We'll leave that up there for a couple minutes so you guys can kind of get a look at it. And Trev, we'll kind of start with you, and we'll kind of go with the first 2 position groups, and then we'll dive into where you guys can see at 3 and 2. We have a little bit of a difference of opinion. So let's dive into that. And let's also, as we kind of go, Trev, talk about what's different compared to last time. Because last time we had tight ends 5, receivers 4, quarterbacks 3, O-line 2, running backs 1. So as you can see, there's several changes here, and we'll dive into those. But let's first start off talking about the Notre Dame wide receivers, who right now we have ranked 5th on the board. I'm going to get your reason why you have them there. If I have anything different, I'll add to it. But the receivers right now, before we get to the summer editions, which I think are going to impact this group probably more than any others on offense. Before we get to the summer additions, let's talk about where the receivers are.
I'm glad you brought that up because in my notes, the first thing that I wrote was this will be the group that will have the most movement for me come the summer and the fall. But state of the room as of today, April 24th, I have it ranked 5th, and so does Brian. And for me, where I put it falls into a couple of things. One, we'll call the constant. Jaden Greathouse was there. He was doing the same stuff he did last spring, going to be anchoring that room as of today. You know, Jordan Faison, you call that the same. He's still splitting his time with lacrosse. So what I start looking at are the pieces in between. And unfortunately, there were some things that were outside of the control from Mike Brown, Mike Denbrock, the receiving room as a whole. Will Pauling was at 75% for most of the spring until the blue gold game. He did some nice things. His burst is a lot quicker than what I thought. He's faster than what I thought. But unfortunately, he ended the day with no catches. So it's hard to evaluate what he did because in the Jersey scrimmage, he was still going through things a little bit, like more than 75%, but he wasn't a full 100% in the Jersey scrimmage either. And then I start looking at the other players. I would have loved to see Micah Gilbert in the spring, but unfortunately, he had that injury, but he'll be back. But we didn't get to see him. So then I started thinking about guys like KK Smith and Cam Williams. And unfortunately for me, we might have a difference of opinion on Cam Williams, but for KK Smith, he didn't take the jump that I wanted him to have this spring. Him and Cam Williams have the two skill sets on the team that can really stretch the field vertically. Seen a little bit of it from Will Pauling in the blue gold game, and we know Malachi Fields and Jaden Greathouse and Jordan Faison to a degree can do the same. But KK Smith and Cam Williams are the two guys on that roster in that room that are burners, that can take the top off of the defense. And for KK Smith, he's going into his junior year of football, and he's still having some of the same issues that he was having as a freshman when he came in.
Lack of strength, got to make more plays on the ball, has to be more consistent, right?
Now, Cam Williams, it's different. And like we've talked about on the show before, I didn't see what he was before this spring. And so
I can speak on that one if you want, Trev.
Yeah, please
with
do.
Cam. I mean, Cam definitely made a big jump this spring. Okay. There's no question about it. The problem is that it wasn't the jump that you hoped for, where you felt like coming out of the spring, like, oh, there's no doubt that guy's got to play. He doesn't have to start, but he's got to play. I think it was enough to where you felt like, okay, with a good spring and a good fall camp, he's going to get there. And I'm a lot more optimistic that he's going to get there than I was at the end of the season last year. And especially more so that, well, actually, I thought he was better last spring than he was in fall camp. Yeah, like in the game situations. But he was better in drills. He was better in practice. You just kind of hope that he would finish the spring off by growing. And I think he made improvements, but then they just kind of were there all spring. You know, like he was here, you know, in the fall, and then he got here in the spring. But instead of seeing like that upward trend all spring, he just kind of was like here a little bit. You know, we saw in the Jersey scrimmage, or the blue gold game, there's a couple routes where he got open down the field late, but his get off is why he got off late, is why he got open late, as opposed to getting open earlier. He makes a really nice catch behind his back on a third down from CJ Carr. Like, CJ got it out there, but it was not a good ball. Cam had to go back and make the catch on a 3rd and 9, got open. Now it's a great catch, but then he drops a crossing route, you know, or earlier in the scrimmage from Angeli, and you're just like, I will say this, though, what's interesting about Cam Williams, this could be just total coincidence, but almost every time I've seen Cam Williams make a play in practice, he's getting thrown the ball by CJ Carr. Almost every single time. And you wonder if that's going to impact him in the summer and fall, because he's going to be catching more balls from CJ Carr, since there's now only 2 guys in the quarterback battle compared to 1 or 3. Sure. That's going to be interesting. But yeah, you hoped that with all the reps he was getting, with Micah Gilbert out, Malachi Fields not here yet, you just hope that Cam would just kind of take that steady climb. Maybe he did to the coaches. We didn't see that. And so I saw improvement from where he was last year. Certainly improvement from where he was in the fall, but there wasn't that improvement from practice 1 to practice 14 that we hoped to see. Or I shouldn't say that, because we didn't see practice 14, but the blue gold game, we didn't see quite that jump. I'm encouraged that he showed something, but there's still a lot more that he needs to show. And I am very curious, Trev, to see if that's just a coincidence, or if that's something that continues to manifest in the summer and fall.
That's a really good point. And I think summer and fall is going to be a crucial time for a kid like Cam Williams to see if he can take that next step to really crack into the rotation. I will say, for me, when I was looking at the receiver room as a whole, what my expectations were of Cam Williams, maybe slightly too high, but based on what we know his ability is as a player, what his athleticism is and his talent, plus just kind of what the room needs. You were hoping he takes that next step. But I will say some of that was kind of cushioned for me by the emergence of Elijah Burris. He was somebody that stuck out to us from the first practice that we got to go see of, yo, man, I mean, hey, Elijah Burris, for a true freshman, he moves a little bit different than the other two. And he was head and shoulders above them. And it remained that throughout campus. And when I mean head and shoulders, I don't mean the other two were bad. It's just Elijah Burris looked more ready to contribute on offense than two early enrollee true freshmen. One of them has not played wide receiver since before March 1st. And so the emergence for him was really promising moving forward. I hope that he can continue to take that next step to where maybe the minutes that he's seeing isn't just solely in mop-up duty at the end of the game. Maybe he can get in there a little bit earlier. Not saying that Elijah Burris is going to be stepping onto the field first quarter against Miami or Texas A&M, but maybe we don't have to wait until they play, Syracuse at home to see Elijah Burris. So he was somebody for me. And then, of course, the two other freshmen, Jerome Bettis Jr. and Scrap Richardson, they're just still finding their footing. They should still be in high school, and same with Elijah, but they're finding their footing. And I liked in some of the moments what I saw from them. Scrap had a really good blue gold game. Still, you can tell he's still really raw, but his athleticism is shining once he does get the ball in his hands. He knows what to do with it, which is why they wanted to convert him to wide receiver. And so that's where I'm at with the wide receiver room. Brian, anything else to add there?
Yeah, I even though they went down in the rankings, I'm actually more encouraged by the receivers now than I was coming out of the spring or coming into the spring. Because, again, we did see some growth from Cam Williams. We did see Elijah Burris kind of step up. And the biggest guy who kind of went from, yeah, he's not going to help you anytime soon, to, hey, that guy took a big stride late in spring is Scrap Richardson. That was another encouragement. Again, you could watch the spring game and still see a guy that needs a lot of work.
Yeah.
But if you saw what he looked like the first day of practice, you're like, that dude looks like he played wide receiver in high school. Now, he just is raw as a wide receiver. Whereas before, he looked like that dude's never played wide receiver a day in his life. That's what he looked like on day one. Yeah. And you're watching him make that contested catch down the field, which was really impressive. That answers to me the biggest question about him. I've said this a million times on this show, Trev. As a receivers coach, I never cared what a receiver could do or not do as a route runner in high school. If that kid couldn't come to my school and learn how to run routes, that's a me problem, not a him problem. If the physical tools were there. And with Scrap, I never cared about the physical tools. I mean, about the route running, because I knew the physical tools were there. Really good foot quickness, good suddenness, really loose hips, just really explosive athlete. You just said, okay, I got to teach him. As a receivers coach, I got to teach him how to play the game. Totally fine. But can he catch the football? Can he track the football down the field? And when he made that contested grab in the blue gold game, you're just like, okay, that's about the toughest catch he's going to have to make. And if he can make that, then I feel good about it. And then, of course, he catches the over route. That's the other one. Can you catch the ball from the quarterback on the run? That tends to be a hard ball for guys who can't catch well or don't track the ball well to catch, because you're both moving. And he catches it with ease and then runs into the end zone. So I was very encouraged by what we saw from Scrap by the end of the spring. Now, is he going to be able to help you in the fall? There's a long way to go before he's going to get there. But now you look at it, you're like, dude, this guy is going to help you someday, whether it's this season or next season. I can't wait to see what Scrap looks like next spring. And that was the biggest improvement. So the receivers as a whole, we got to see Will Pauling play a little bit more full speed. The receivers as a whole are in a better position today, in my view, than where they were coming into the spring. And that's why it was kind of a little bit challenging to move them down to 5. And the other thing, too, is, like I said, Jaden Greathouse. We didn't see as much of him. Jordan Faison. I mean, we had the receivers where we ranked him, and then we never saw Jordan Faison again the last 2 practices. So that, like, he doesn't really count in my ranking right now because we didn't see him the last 2 practices. Well, he counts, but he counts as not there. So you take him out of the mix compared to where we were when we were ranking them earlier in the session. So I'm actually encouraged by what I saw from the receivers, but there's a lot of work to be done there, and it's okay to say that. But as you said, Trev, this is the position group that I think is going to, on offense, going to be most impacted when we get to the summer. And Coach Freeman, in his press conference yesterday, announced that Micah Gilbert was cleared for, I believe he said he was one of the ones that was cleared for summer workouts, correct?
Yes.
I believe is what he said. So that's huge. So you're going to get Micah Gilbert back. You're going to get Malachi Fields back. And then, of course, Jordan Faison's eventually going to be done with lacrosse. So I think this group is going to get a big boost when we do our preseason position rankings. Let's go to number 4, Trev. So we had tight ends number 4. Here's the big reason I moved the tight ends up. It was really 2 guys. Number 1, well, actually, it was really the whole group. There were so many questions answered. Could Eli Raridan really raise his level of play? We had saw some nice things from him in the spring, but when you see him in the Jersey scrimmage, you see him rip off that big catch and run, and you see that athleticism, the make you miss ability, those type of skills. You're like, okay, Eli is that dude again that we hoped he could be coming out of high school. So you look at that position group, and one thing that the receiving group had in the going into the Jersey scrimmage that the tight end did not have is they had Jaden Greathouse as that go-to impact player. Well, now the tight end room said, okay, we'll see you and we'll show you we got Eli Raridan. That was one of the biggest revelations of the entire offense this spring was, okay, we haven't seen the potential 5-star upside Eli Raridan since his high school days, since the knee injury he suffered in high school and basketball. We've seen little flashes of it, but seeing Eli break out was huge. That's number 1. If he doesn't break out, I don't care what else happens at the position group. There's still 5. His breakout was step 1. Step 2 was Kevin Bauman looked like he did in 2022 when he was the number 2, number 3 tight end. If you remember, Kevin Bauman caught a really tough catch down the seam against Ohio State. He was a good blocker, and then he got hurt again. Seeing him perform, I mean, not just the grab from C.J. Carr, but go to the first big run of the game where him and Eli Raridan just blow up the defensive end, and then Eli comes off late to take out Luke Talich, which opens up that run. The run blocking we saw from the tight end position, and Kevin Bauman was a big part of that, along with Eli, was so much better than what we saw from the position in the fall, which was a major complaint from Trevor almost weekly, and it was justified weekly. Was a huge improvement, and Kevin Bauman being healthy. Now, look, obviously, every single week, I'm going to have in the back of my head, as long as he stays healthy, as long as he stays healthy. I just don't feel like putting that caveat on him every week. Everybody in the chat knows Kevin Bauman has to stay healthy. But he was this spring, and he looked good. He's not the athlete he was when he got here. He's just not. But he's better than the athlete we saw last year. That's just that to me was a no-brainer. So that was really good to see. But he looks kind of like robo tight end. When you see him in practice, he got like all these braces on and strips on, and you're just like, dude, they're taping that kid together. But he's balling. He's playing. And the catch he made was a great catch. But, like, I don't really care about that as much. Like, okay, yeah, you caught a pass. It was, can you move? Do you still have the feel for the game? And that's what – the catch was fine, but it was more of the, hey, go get open type of an immediate mindset of this is a kid who hasn't run a route like that in a long time, and he went out and ran that route, made that play. But then to see the blocking, to see the movement was encouraging. And then finally, for me, Trev, was Jack Larson had a couple rough practices early. I mean, had a couple good practices early. He had a not very good Jersey scrimmage, but I thought he played very well in the blue gold game. And so seeing overall positives from Jack Larson also, and again, not just the tough catch, but he caught another ball down the seam. I thought he blocked pretty well. I just thought overall, your performance isn't graded on one play. It's how did you do overall? And that's the thing for me. I thought overall, the tight end room played really well in the Jersey scrimmage. And you know, we talked about the production from the running backs, but, you know, one of the questions that people had about the tight end room is like, look, are they going to be targeted? I mean, for whatever reason, Mike Denbrock just doesn't seem to have, you know, put a whole lot into the tight end production, and we're like, well, there's some reasons for that, and you can't always count on necessarily the tight ends to be giving you the kind of effort you hope for. Let's just be honest. That was a complaint that we had last season about the tight ends. But then you come out into the Jersey scrimmage and you see the production. You talk about Kevin Bauman had his big catch. You look, I'm trying to pull up the stats from that game too, Trev, but you kind of look at it and you're just like, look, there's production here. She's going to pull up there so you guys can now see the production I'm talking about. So you look at the tight ends here. You had Jack Larson had 2 catches for 41 yards. Eli Raritan had 2 for 21. So that's what we're looking at, 4 catches for 62 yards. And then Henry Garrity had 1 for 24 yards. That's 5 catches for, what would it be, 66 yards. And then what they don't have on here is Kevin Bauman's catch for whatever reason. It's not listed on here, but I believe that went for 26 yards or 24 yards.
I think it was 24.
So you're now talking about them. So 41, 62, 86. You're talking about having 6-7 catches for over 100 yards. So your running backs and your tight ends produced over 100 yards in the Jersey scrimmage. And you're like, okay, that's the production that we were hoping that we would see from that unit. And it wasn't check downs. It wasn't, hey, yeah, it's nice that you're doing that, but it's crossing routes. It's these type. It wasn't like it was focal points. It was corner routes. Jack Larson's catch was a slot fade. When you're running slot fade, that's the ball you want to ideally throw. Seam routes. I mean, things that we said before the spring, we think that's going to be a greater part of what they're doing. And I think Jack caught one in the Jersey scrimmage no, it wasn't Jack. Who was it that caught the one in the Jersey scrimmage? Was it Bauman that caught the one in the Jersey scrimmage? And then Jack dropped one in the Jersey scrimmage. Yeah. And then we saw Henry Garrity catch one in the Blue Gold game. And so you're like, okay, these are focal point plays. And that was something that all factored into it for me of why that group is where they are. And they're going to get reinforcements as well. They're going to get Ty Washington in the summer, and they're also going to get James Flanagan. So really much more. That's the group on every position group on the team, all 10. This is the one that most solidified my confidence level in the unit. I felt good if Eli can be healthy, he's going to be good, but I have no clue after that. And now I feel a lot better. Now, injuries are still a bit of a concern, but I feel a lot better about where that group is now than I did coming into the spring, Trev.
Yeah, you and I see the tight end room very similarly. To me, they checked all the boxes that I was looking for between the Jersey scrimmage and the Blue Gold game. It's how are you going to look from Eli Raritan needing to emerge to be that guy? Because all 3 of the tight ends were at different spots. You look at Eli, it's like, okay, hey, man, are you ready to be the guy? Can you be an integral part of this offense? Not, hey, they'll run you in, you'll catch a dump off here and there, and we'll have you block. It's, hey, can you be a top 3 passing target in this offense given the play call? With Kevin Bauman, yes, it was stay healthy, agreed. But 2, it's like, hey, can you basically be what Eli Raritan was last year? Can you be a contributing member of this offense? And what I saw between the Jersey scrimmage and the Blue Gold game gave me a lot more comfort. A long way to go. There's a long way between now and August 31st. And then there's an even longer way between August 31st and the quarterfinals of the playoffs. And so that level is going to have to remain consistent. But from what I saw, made me feel really good. And then with Jack Larson, he provides a skill set that not a lot of the other tight ends have right now. He is more of a true pass catcher than what some of the other tight ends are in the room. Little shaky in the Jersey scrimmage. Not the best ball, but catchable. But little shaky in the Jersey scrimmage. And then overall, I thought he played fantastic in the Blue Gold game. And so it was like, okay, on the biggest stage that you were able to play on this spring, you performed well once again. And so it put my mind at ease a lot. And we talked about Henry Garrity a little bit. Yes, he's a walk-on, but I mean, hey, he's not just some scrub that wants to be a part of the football team. He's a good football player, man. I'm not saying that he's going to go out against, USC and have 5 catches for 60 yards and a touchdown, but in a pinch, if you need somebody to come in and play tight end, Henry Garrity's a good football player, man. So for me, when we talk about the differences between the tight end room and the receiver room, that was one of the examples that I was talking about of, look, it's not like the receivers played bad. To our point, they took a lot of positive steps this spring. But when I compared the tight end room to the wide receiver room, I think the tight end room from top to bottom took more steps, all on the board, all things considered, in comparison to the receiver room. So that's where I was at with those rankings.
So, Trev, number 3, your number 3 from the season did not change. This is where we have a difference of opinion. Your number 3 is quarterback. Talk to me. Obviously, the quarterback room didn't add anybody. They've lost somebody since then. You still have the quarterbacks number 3. Talk to me about why you have the quarterbacks ranked where you have them. What did you see from that group this in the sort of the to close out the spring?
Yeah. So when I looked at the quarterback room, one, they are who we thought they were. And I mean that in a good way. Kenny was the flashy playmaker, and when he's on, he's on. But sometimes, like we saw in the Jersey scrimmage and in the blue gold game, if he wasn't that on, offense was a little shaky. But the playmaking ability was there. The arm talent is through the roof. I mean, it's tough to overthrow both Will Pauling and Ben Minnick, 2 of the faster players on the team, throwing to the opposite hash. And that's what Kenny Minchey did. So his arm talent is through the roof. His athleticism is there. I mean, I know it's a fun play to go back and look at, but I don't know of a lot of quarterbacks that are doing backflips and landing them that way after a celebration. Ideally, please don't do that anymore. Stay healthy. But, it's still cool to see. Still cool to say.
When he did that, what popped through my head? I think I actually told Vince this in the show. I said, look, it reminded me of that scene from Major League. Nice catch, Hayes. Don't ever do it again. You know what I mean? It just was like, yeah. That's really impressive. Don't ever do it again.
Yep. That will be the one and only time I want to see a backflip from Kenny Minchey. But the athleticism is there. The playmaking ability is there. Things have to be shorn up like we talked about on Tuesday. Got to find a way to be more consistent, start faster. CJ Carr, he was who we thought he was. Same with Kenny Minchey. There's not a throw on the field that he can't make. He has a lot of poise. He is accurate, and he makes the right decisions. Now, the reason why I have them still at 3rd is because when I take that away, one, it's not like I learned anything new about the quarterbacks, at least through my lens. It's the same thoughts that I had about them were more so confirmed. I didn't learn anything new. It's like I knew CJ could make all the throws. Like I thought that he could. I thought that he would have the poise. I thought that he could make multi-layer reads, and then that's what he did. I thought Kenny was an exciting playmaker. I thought that his arm talent was through the roof. And then it was more so confirmed. The thing for me and what separated them out from the offensive line, because that's where we have the discrepancy in our list, is the offensive line has done it in games. And the offensive line has done it in games. And Marcus Freeman talked about this in his press conference about the quarterbacks is they're going to do the best that they can to simulate some of the pressure so it's not brand new when they go down to Miami, Florida on August 31st. And I think to a degree you can, but at the end of the day, there's just going to be lessons that we learn about Kenny and CJ that we're just going to have to wait to be answered until August 31st. And then as the season progresses. Whereas on the offensive line, I look at it and it's like, okay, Ashton Craig has played in big settings. Anthony Knapp has played in big settings. Charles Jagasaw has played in big settings. Emil Wagner played all 16 games last season. And I look at the quarterbacks, and there is still a level of projection there for me. I'm confident that they can. That's not me saying that I don't think that they could, but it is I cannot say with 100% certainty how CJ and Kenny are going to be in that moment, because up to this point, the 2 biggest stages that they've played in have been the blue gold games.
Sure.
And so that to me is what separated it. It was very close. But when I look at the in-game experience, when I look at the big in-game experience, and I hold that very close in evaluating quarterbacks, not to the fault of their own, they just haven't had it yet. And so that's kind of where I kept the quarterbacks, because through spring, like I said, it's not like I learned anything new. It just confirmed a lot of the things that we had talked about. So that's where I'm at with the quarterbacks.
So I had quarterbacks too, and I'll kind of factor into that, and then I'll transition into why I have them over the offensive line, and then you can follow up, and that's kind of how we'll zigzag this a little bit. I had quarterbacks too for a couple reasons. I think the confirmation thing mattered to me. I mean, we had them third in this, pre-jersey scrimmage, and then blue gold game. And I thought Kenny wasn't as good in the blue gold game as he was in the jersey scrimmage. Yeah. He had that one big mistake in the jersey scrimmage, but overall he played, I thought, really well. And his blue gold game performance was actually good. He just, like in typical Kenny Minchie fashion, he just started slow. But once he got rolling, I mean, people say, oh, he's 6 of 14. Like the people that want CJ Carr to start, oh, Kenny went 6. I'm like, yeah, okay, went 6 of 14, throwaway, 2 drops, but he also threw some great balls, and you can't just ignore the playmaking ability. So, Kenny kind of showed me in the two, because here's the thing that why this matters to me. No, they haven't played in the game yet. Totally get it. Totally fair. And at the end of the day, we don't know what they're going to look like playing in a game. But here's why and Marcus Freeman made a comment about this yesterday that I loved, because I was like, that's exactly what I'm trying to say. Like, he said it perfectly. He's like, the competition, like, no, they haven't played in the game, but this kind of competition against each other is sort of kind of preparing you for that, because it's not just a normal practice where you're just going through the motion. I got to play well today, because otherwise that guy's going to play well today. And we've made that point, and he made it extremely well. And to see both of the young players go into the jersey scrimmage and go into the blue gold game with spotlight on them, media is going to be there for the jersey scrimmage. And, obviously tens of thousands of fans are going to be at the blue gold game. No, it's not the same as playing at Miami, but it's not the same as playing in just a normal Saturday afternoon practice either. And to see them both perform the way they did move the needle for me, because the big thing that we talked about with this group before the spring was we kind of thought Steve was going to be Steve. Nothing was going to rattle Steve. He's not going to be he's not going to buckle under the pressure of 2 young, talented players. That's just not who he is. And whatever we think about his processing ability and arm talent and length of his arm and all these other type of things, does he take too many sacks? One thing we knew, that dude flat out is going to be calm and poised and going to give you the best of himself. And we saw that. And it wasn't good enough. I mean, it was very easy to see, especially the last 2 open practices, which included the jersey scrimmage and the blue gold game, that there just was this pretty big gap between the other 2 kids and Steve Angeli. And it wasn't that Steve Angeli in any way regressed. It was those 2 guys said, we're going to seize it. That's huge for me. Huge for me. And so to see them perform that way in those moments, to see CJ Carr perform the way he did in the blue gold game, just completely raised the level for me for the quarterback. So not so much compared to the tight ends, but just more so this is how I evaluated the quarterbacks, is I feel much better about where the quarterback room is now than I did coming into the spring. Then when I look at the offensive line room, I still have some question marks about the offensive line. Who's the center going to be? I mean, so you say, well, I don't know who the quarterback's going to be. Well, I don't know who the center's going to be. Are we sure that the left tackle is going to be the left tackle? The right tackle is going to be the right tackle? Could the right tackle become the left tackle? There's all these different question marks that still exist. We did see an injury to Gerby Lambert since we did the update on them last time. And so there wasn't anything that I saw necessarily. I mean, you got Anthony Knapp back, but he's still working himself back to good health. We did get a chance to see Billy Strauss, so that was good. But we knew those guys were eventually going to be available. And so I still have some question marks about the O-line from a health standpoint and a depth standpoint. And so it was more so just the loss of Gerby, still just being uncertain of what the line's going to look like right now where they are, that it combined with how well the young quarterbacks played, that sort of vaulted that up. And I didn't think Charles Jagasaw played overly well in either game. I think he was dealing with a little bit. I think he's still getting used to playing guard consistently. Did get his ankle rolled up on in the jersey scrimmage. He was good. He just wasn't dominant. So that's kind of where I look at this is it was partly the quarterbacks really stepping up, but really the O-line, it's just more about, I still don't know what it's going to look like. And, there is a new injury on the O-line. So that eventually you're like, okay, they keep having all these injuries on the O-line. I can't ignore that. And that's really what it kind of came down to for me. If the O-line's healthy, I utmost confidence it's going to be pretty good this year. I'm not one of those, oh man, if Anthony Knapp starts at left tackle, they're totally screwed. It's a concern if he doesn't improve. And I still don't think he's the best left tackle option on the roster, but he is now. That the other guy that I thought should have been there or in the starting lineup is now hurt. That changes things for me a little bit. And that's where it came from for me, why I dropped them down. I'm confident that I'm going to feel much better about them when we get to the season. But for right now, there's just too many injury question marks for me to have them all that much higher. And I actually thought about putting them behind the tight ends, but I still just, with the tight end injury history, it was still a little bit concerning. Because again, I look at it as like Anthony Knapp. I don't know that he's 100% yet. I only saw him once this spring, the blue gold game for a few series. That's it. And still need to see who the center is going to be. And of course, we saw Jack Gasol wasn't as dominant as I kind of hoped he would be. It doesn't bother me too much because we did see him play pretty well against Penn State at that position. But I just have to evaluate it for what we saw this spring, and I think that group is still a work in progress. So that's really what came down to for me, because I do think there's been separation of quarterback. I do feel like I don't think one guy has emerged enough to say that's the starter at the end of the spring. But in my opinion, and that's what these rankings matter, is my opinion, right? Because it's my rankings, is I do think we saw one guy emerge more than anybody else at that position. That doesn't mean the battle's over, because there's double this amount of practice time in the fall plus summer. But for right now, and I needed to see somebody separate, not because others struggled, but because he separated. And I think we saw that from CJ Carr. But Kenny's still nipping on his heels, and that makes me feel really good about that position. So it's more so about the performance of the quarterbacks than concerns about the O-line. But all my concerns about the O-line just come down to health. That's really – I actually thought they pass pro'd pretty well in the spring game. And some of the mistakes that were made by like a freshman, like a new guy. It wasn't like Anthony Knapp wasn't getting beat. Emil wasn't getting beat. I mean – and when they were giving up stuff in the run game, it was like, I was going against Gabriel Rubio or Bryce Young or, Jared Dawson or somebody like that. It was like, yeah, you kind of get that. So that's where I'm at with those rankings.
Oh, I totally get that. A lot of the things that you were talking about with the offensive line, I get. For me, it was one pass pro was better on an offensive line unit that had not had a lot of time together this spring. And that was promising to me, because then I started thinking about, okay, what will it look like when they do have more than maybe a week of practice lining up and doing it together? But evaluating where they were at this spring, there was a noticeable difference for me on I guess you could say offensive efficiency between the Jersey scrimmage and the blue gold game, when what we perceived to be the projected starting offensive line in. And that carried a lot of weight to me because, again, it's a tough measuring tool, because in the Jersey scrimmage, in like the one-on-one drills that we saw, you were seeing true freshmen and walk-ons go against Bryce Young. Like that's a tough eval, but then when I got to see in the blue gold game, starters looked pretty decent. Not a crazy dominant group, but better from a week removed from the Jersey scrimmage. Again, it's still a little tough to evaluate, because for most of the blue gold game, Anthony Knapp was lined up across from Cole Mullins, who had a good spring, but again, that's a different level than lining up against Boubacar Traore, Bryce Young, Kingston Viliamasa, Josh Burnham, and so that was a little harder to evaluate. For me, I kept the offensive line where it was because, and this is just me, I don't want to say that this is an Irish breakdown take, but I start thinking about a lot of the conversations that we had about the offensive line. Some of them are like, gosh, who knows what the offensive line is going to be? To be honest with you, I think I say that more so hoping that there's going to be a battle for left tackle and putting Gerby Lambert in there. But from what happened last season and then this season, seeing him take reps at right tackle and then getting injured, I'm not saying the door's closed on that, but the other guy started 15 games, went 14-1. And I'm not saying the reason why they lost to Northern Illinois was because of Anthony Knapp, and improvements have to be made from him, especially in pass protection. That is definitely something that's on the top of my list. But at center, to me, it's between Ashton Craig and Joe Otting. And with Ashton Craig coming back as a full participant in summer, I think that conversation's quickly going to go away. Not anything to do with Joe Otting, but I put a lot of weight into playing in games. And it's kind of the easy route out, but it's my best evaluation tool because I have seen what you've done in big games. And so I don't know who the center is going to be slated. If I were a betting
we
man,
haven't seen really in a whole lot of big games.
More than Joe Otting.
Sure. No, I mean as far as the quarter, like there's a question mark in some of these places all over.
Oh, I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
Like
more so to the quarterbacks. I think Ashton Craig's going to start at center. I didn't want that to come across as a comparison to him. I'm saying like there's still some question marks with the O-line. We didn't see Anthony Knapp play in the championship game. We saw him in the others. So yeah, there's a lot of questions. I did want to get to number one, Trev, because I think we're on the same page here. It's just more so you're placing more into like, okay, I need to see this, I need to see that. That's fine. That's consistent with who you are. Totally get it. And that's where we had our not difference of opinion, but where we had the difference in ranking. I don't think it's much of a difference of opinion. Let's wrap up number one, because this is an easy one, because even if you don't count Jeremiah Love, I still kind of put this group here. Yeah. And we do count him because he could have played. If it was a real game, Jeremiah Love plays. If it was a real game. Mm-hmm. It just was like, what's the point of playing him now? Running backs, numero uno. I think what the Jersey scrimmage or what the blue gold game showed to me, Trevor, is this is an elite backfield whether or not Jeremiah Love is there. It's just no brainer, no doubt, clear number one when he is there. It just solidified that depth chart to me.
Absolutely. I mean, it's just guy after guy after guy. And look, with not seeing Jeremiah Love in the Jersey scrimmage of the spring game, yes, I'm a show me guy, but I'm also under the impression there's just some players that you just don't have to see a lot of to know what you're getting. Yeah, Jeremiah Love. Like, did we see a lot of Leonard Moore in the spring game? No, but I know what we're going to get from
him. And when he did play in the two, he was pretty good, right?
Yeah, like it was like how like Riley Mills didn't play at all last year in the blue gold game. I didn't have to see that.
Right?
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
Like, gee, I don't know what we're going to get from Riley Mills when the season starts.
Yeah. So when you have guys like that, that's where I'm at. Jeremiah Love, yes. But to your point, Brian, the rest of the room, man, it's just they can come at you.
Him not playing solidified this ranking for me because of how well the unit played without him. Now again, this isn't saying they don't need Jeremiah Love. This is saying, look, we're granting he's a star. He showed it. I don't need to see that in a blue gold game. He is that. I saw him do that in the first round playoff game last year and against USC and against Army and just all these other games, Texas A&M. He is an established player, 1,100 plus yards. Great player, all that. I don't need to see that. That's the point. But if you take him out, that group still looked really good. Jadarian looked like what he would look like if he was a lead back. We saw Keidron Young look really good, in my opinion, not just as a runner, but also as a pass catcher. We saw the running backs as a whole have over 100 yards receiving. They didn't run the ball great from a number standpoint, but a lot of that was the O-line didn't play very well in the run game, I didn't think, which kind of factors a little bit into my grade, but I don't put too much into it because we didn't see the starting line. But like the first drive of the game, O-line opens up some run lanes and Jadarian's got to make some plays. He's got to make the right reads. He made a great read to bounce off of the tight end down block on the long run. But even his first one went for 9 yards. He had to make Jalen Sneed miss in the hole. Nobody touches Jalen Sneed. It's a run stunt. Nobody's accounted for him. And he just flat out makes the dude miss. A guy that like everybody's been talking about all spring. Great player. Jadarian's like, get out of my way. I'm gone. 9 yards. First play of the game. And you're like, dude, that's a dude. And everybody's like, oh, yeah, that's right. Maybe I should stop hating on Jadarian Price. Because it's a weird group of fans that just like want to constantly pick apart Jadarian Price's game. Because they're like, they love Jeremiah Love. I'm like, why can't you love both of them? Like, he's the one. He's, and he's a star, but he's also really flipping good. And it's just really weird. But seeing Keidron Young in some real game minutes as well, catching the ball was like, dude, seriously? Like, if that is, like your 3 or your 4. Like, give me a break. But like, the yards don't matter as much to me as how you play. There was a particular play where I think Jabron Payne gained 2 yards, but it was such an impressive 2-yard gain because he had this really nasty jump cut to avoid a tackle for loss to then gain 2 yards. And you're like, dude, that was only a 2-yard gain, but that was an impressive 2-yard gain. He maximized the yards available on that particular play. We saw a lot of that. And I thought the guy that was least effective as a runner, that made the most bad decisions as a runner, was Aeneas Williams. Well, we've seen Aeneas play better than what he did in the Blue Gold game. So I'm not worried about that. But to see Jadarian do his thing, to see Kedron Young do his thing, to see Nolan James like really get some legitimate touches, you're like, yep, they're really loaded at running back. That was still probably the best position group they had during the Blue Gold game outside of quarterback. Because that's what, at the end of the day, I think the quarterbacks were the most impressive offensive unit in the spring game, in the Blue Gold game. Yeah. If I'm ranking the positions, and this kind of factors into why they jumped the O-line, if I'm ranking how the position groups played in the Blue Gold game, it's quarterbacks, running backs, tight ends, O-line, wide receivers. Just in that game. And you could argue maybe the tight end should have been second. You could argue that, but that's because they played really well. The running backs were somewhat more, their overall performance was impacted by the offensive line didn't play that great. They didn't play bad. I mean, again, it's I'm not worried about it, but that was just, it just solidified like, yeah, this is a really, really good group. Really good group.
Yeah. I mean, it was to the point where, and again, Lauren follows the team. She watches games, but not to the degree of like what we do. But we were driving back to my dad's getting ready for the show. She's like, yeah, like the running backs look really good today. Like Jeremiah Love looked like Jeremiah Love. And I was like, he didn't play today. She's like, really? And I was like, no. She's like, oh, well, there's somebody out there making Jeremiah Love plays. I was like, yeah, that was Jadarian Price.
I love that.
I was like, you know what I mean? But I think that just goes to further the point of, in previous years, if Notre Dame doesn't have a guy like Jeremiah Love in the spring game and you don't watch him go out and play, it's like, ooh, okay, yeah, like these are good football players, but they're not, the game records that they are. Now that, dude, they have like 5. I mean, it's just, yeah, the running back room is loaded. They were my clear-cut number 1. So it's where we're at on the offensive ones.
I want to respond to something being talked about in the chat. Somebody saying that the quarterbacks weren't pressured because they faced a base defense. That's not what I saw in the game. Matter of fact, on the first throw that CJ Carr made, they ran it. The throw to Kevin Bauman, they ran a run stunt, or like an inside stunt with Jalen Steed, who was trying to blitz. On the very next play, they brought a double inside blitz. So, and CJ Carr dumped the ball off to the tight end. I mean, so for a 6-yard gain. So I want to see how CJ Carr handles pressure. Well, I just watched him beat 2 blitzes in a row, and I'm watching it again just to confirm that I'm accurate on this. But I just watched him complete 2 balls for 30-some yards against stunts and blitzes. They weren't playing against some like basic defense where they were just lining up in a 4-2-5 and playing the same coverage. That's not what we saw in this game. There were times when they were doing that, especially against the threes. But CJ Carr's first drive of the game was against the first team defense. It was not against. It was not some situation where he was going against the third team defense. So, and then the second big throw he made was against because they emptied it out, which forced the defense to call off the blitz that they had scheduled. So I don't agree with the premise that they just ran against some base defense and didn't have to deal with pressure. As I said, he sees a double inside blitz. He knows that they can't get to the tight end. He dumps it off to the tight end for a 6-yard gain. That's kind of handling the defense. Did they show all what they do? No, but neither did the offense. And I'll say, okay, yeah, they'll do more. They'll do more, sure. But they can't be hit. That's a cop out. That's a cop out from their performance, in my opinion. If anything, like here's the reason I have with that argument. You don't know that being able to be hit or facing more pressure wouldn't result in them playing better, especially Kenny. You don't know the answer to that because if they're blitzing more, that's more opportunities for smart quarterbacks who are accurate to beat you. So I just think that we're assuming, well, because this didn't happen, that means that diminishes their performance. I don't agree with that at all. I think sometimes when a guy can be hit, he performs better. And here's the thing, CJ Carr could get hit in last year's spring game, and he played just as well in last year's spring game. Kenny Minchie could get hit in last year's spring game, and I think he was better in last year's spring game than he was in this year's spring game in the second half. Not the first half. He was not very good in the first half last year. So I think that sometimes we're looking for things to just kind of nitpick about, and I don't think that that's a good line of argumentation for me in that particular example. So overall, Trev, do you feel better about the offense today than you did be going into the Jersey scrimmage when we first did this rankings?
Overall, yeah, absolutely I do. And that's before we even have the conversation of what's coming. But to me, the spring period is about growth, and it's about building the foundation for your team. It's not, all right, it's April 24th. What are they going to look like on August 31st? It's that will never be my takeaway from the spring. But I've been around football long enough. I understand the game well enough to where you can start to see what it will evolve into. And that's where I have a lot of hope. And that's why I feel a lot more confident about this offense leaving the spring than I did coming into it, because it did answer a good amount of the questions that I had. Not all, but it answered some questions that I had. And that makes me really excited for what this offense can be. It gives us more of a ground to stand on when we talk about what will this offense look like. It's not so much if. It's now a lot of when, and that's a good spot to be in.
And even though there are still some remaining questions, we got to see Malachi Field. Yeah. We have a much better idea of what an offense is going to look like now than we did even before the Jersey scrimmage. So I think that's across the board: quarterback, running back, O-line, tight end, receiver. The O-line was not good, like terrible all spring, because they didn't have their main guys they were solid in the Blue Gold game, going against pretty good defense.
Yeah.
So I feel better about it. So that's going to do it for the offensive section, folks. Before we get to the defense, do us a favor. Hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, share this podcast, give us a 5-star review if you're listening via podcast platform, whether you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, whatever platform you're listening on. Please give us a 5-star review. But of course, as always, we had some big recruiting intel last night on the board, which was kind of big. So if you want to read about that, you'd have got that last night up before all crazy things started to happen. But you get that up there. We're gonna have some more intel coming up, some breakdowns going down. People that just signed up for the message board will tell you, or people that have been on there forever will tell you, you're missing out if you don't have it. You can find that at boards.irishbreakdown.com. So, Mr. Trowbridge, I want to next talk about the Notre Dame defense. And before we begin, let's talk a little big picture about this, because I think this group requires an even greater caveat than the offense did, because I got to be honest, dude, it was kind of hard. I almost wanted to not do this whole thing because of the defense. It's like, how do I put this group fifth? Well, that makes sense because they're missing this. Okay, fine. But how do I put that group fourth? They weren't missing anybody, and they played really well. You're like, yeah, but that's because this group did this, and this. So I had a really tough time with that. And by the way, as we kind of dive into the defense, we do want to see y'all's rankings 5-1 of the defense, what you think about the position groups: DN, D tackle, linebacker, corner, safety. But I got to admit, Trev, it was very challenging doing this one. And last time it was a no-brainer who number one was. As you guys are going to find out, that wasn't as much of a no-brainer now as it was before the Jersey scrimmage, and for good reason. And so there's some groups that I thought performed better. They didn't raise up in the rankings because the group that was ahead of them also performed better. I think we have still some answers to find on defense, obviously, but way more answers now than we did going into the spring. And then even going into the Jersey scrimmage about just personnel, units, all those type of things. I still have a lot of questions about what is a Chris Ash defense going to look like. I still don't think we know. They were working on things this spring. I don't think they were like, this is who we are, and April is who we're going to be in September and October. So I still have some questions there. But I got to tell you, man, I feel a whole lot better about this group, and I had a much, much harder time feeling at all comfortable with, this rankings than last time, just because I felt like, God, I don't want to put anybody 5. Can I just do 1, 2 and then 3A, 3B, 3C. I thought about doing that, and I was like, that would be lame because then 3C is 5. So just man up and make it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But so I did. But I got to tell you, man, before we even get started on this, I had a tough time with this one because I really was encouraged by the talent and the depth of the defense this spring. And the two biggest question marks that we had that could get answered this spring, because defensive end's not going to get answered because just guys weren't there. But the two biggest question marks we had, I feel so much better coming out of spring, D tackle and safety, about where they are.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat as you are, man. It's when you talk about a side of the ball that's this talented, you never want to label anybody as the last or the fifth of the 5 groups. But it's reality of the situation, and anything where you do a ranking system, somebody has to be last. But for me, it's, I sit down and I think about, 1, everything that you talked about. But 2, it was also hard for me because some of these position groups weren't going up against, they weren't in best on best scenarios. And I think about some of the things that we saw, like I said, in the Jersey scrimmage. They were going up against, true freshman offensive linemen, walk-on offensive linemen coming back from injuries. Devin Houston was converted to the offensive line at the start of spring, and he was in there running in the Jersey scrimmage. And so it's tough to evaluate at certain times. We talked about how depleted the wide receiver room was. It's tough to kind of get, unless Jaden Greathouse is going to go up against every single one of the top 4 corners they have to give a good evaluation. So I think for some of these position groups, we're going to have a better idea moving forward, but this is a really talented group, man. But I'm with you. A lot of the questions that I had going into spring, I got answered as well on this side of the ball.
So as we bring our rooms up here, Trev, some of the things we have aren't a whole lot different. So our 5 going into the Jersey scrimmage was DN, D tackle, safeties, linebackers, corners. Not a whole lot of change here, except you and I, you flipped 1 and 2. So let's kind of go through it and talk about why that group is 5th. And then with the defense, what I want to focus on a little bit more, Trev, since there wasn't a lot of changes, even though their ranking hasn't changed, how do we feel about that group kind of now that we are through the Jersey scrimmage and the spring game as we head into the summer? So I'll have you start off with the defensive end position.
Yeah, so for defensive ends, the one thing I do want to add, I do think that before the Jersey scrimmage, I think we had safeties at 4th, before we went into the Jersey scrimmage. And so they were a group that moved up for me as well.
Oh, you know what? I read off what you have now. We had D end, safety, D tackle, corner, linebacker. That's my bad. I read off your current ranking. I was like, it hasn't changed a whole lot. So we actually had a lot of movement. So D tackles and safeties flipped, and then of course you also flipped that. So that's my bad. So we did have D, but we still had D ends 5th.
Yep,
that's the one that hasn't changed. You are correct.
Yep. So for defensive ends, the thing for me is, 1, the thing that's still going to hold principle is there's a lot that we just haven't seen from this room yet, unfortunately, out of the control of anybody in that room. But them being ranked 5th is more of an incomplete grade for me than it is being their last.
Yeah.
Because if Boubacar was healthy, if Logan Thomas played in the blue gold game, I think that could have swayed some things. Now, what I did see from this was Bryce Young is looking to take the next step. He looks bigger, a little bit more twitchy, a little bit more able to take on bigger blockers, something that I like. Cole Mullins had a really big jump for me because he's somebody that I just hadn't seen. I was aware of him, but I never got to see it, and I always heard the Irish Breakdown talk about, gosh, he's more fit on the edge. And I didn't really see him play a whole lot on the interior, but what I do know is that he looked very natural and very comfortable on the edge, which is what we saw in the Jersey scrimmage and the blue gold game. So for him, he moved up the rankings for me. I really like what I saw from Cole Mullins, but a lot of it, like I said, for defensive ends, it's an incomplete grade for me. We didn't see Josh Burnham, Junior Tuialamaka, Logan Thomas, Boubacar Traore, Jordan Botelho in the blue gold game, which is, I think, some of the reason why we saw some of the odd front that we did see. And now Armel Mukum lined up on the outside when they shifted and then brought Preston Zinner down to the line of scrimmage. And so for me, that's kind of where I'm at on defensive ends. I don't want to say that I feel the same about them as I did going into the Jersey scrimmage, but out of the groups of the rest of them, why I have them ranked 5th is they are, in comparison to me, the closest to where they were at going into the Jersey scrimmage. So that's why I have them 5th. There's a lot of promise in the room. The grade's just incomplete.
It was going to be impossible for them to move up because there's no Boubacar Traore in this conversation. Because again, the premise is who's on the team and who's healthy right now. So there is no Boubacar Traore in this conversation. There is no Jordan Patel in this conversation. There's no Chris Burgess in this conversation. And there's no Logan Thomas in this conversation because he got hurt in the spring. So we didn't see him in the Jersey scrimmage or the Blue Gold game. And we didn't see Junior Tilamaka and Josh Burnham play in the Blue Gold game. So it was impossible for them to move up in the rankings. I do feel better about that unit coming out of spring because we saw Bryce Young get better.
Mm-hmm.
And we saw Cole Mullins look pretty good in the Jersey scrimmage and in the Blue Gold game. And so I was pushing back on something Outbound said earlier about, what could change if they get hit. Well, the only play that I could look back and say, well, if they could get hit, this might have changed is actually a play that happened in the Jersey scrimmage on a touchdown pass that was thrown because Cole Mullins kind of slowed up because he couldn't hit the quarterback. We didn't see that in the Blue Gold game, but we saw that in the Jersey scrimmage. So what we saw from Cole Mullins in the Blue Gold game was not new. We saw that in the Jersey scrimmage as well. So I feel a lot better about the defensive ends now, Trev, than I did coming out of the spring or going into the Jersey scrimmage, and certainly before as far as what was left on the depth chart. But there just was no way they were going to be able to really move up because of just who's not there. So next, Trev, this is a change. So as you mentioned, D tackle safeties were flipped. And what we can both say, and because we talked about this before the show, it's not anything about what the D tackles did. So when you look at what I feel way better about the D tackle room now than I did before the spring and even before the Jersey scrimmage, because we've seen Gabriel Rubio be solid, be out there. I mean, the fact that Gabriel Rubio went through the whole spring, didn't get banged up, is a step in the right direction because he's had some of those issues. We didn't see a lot of Donovan Heinisch, not because he's injured, just like, dude, we know what Donovan Heinisch can do. He played a lot of snaps in the playoffs. Like, just let's let him get healthy and those type of things. We know what he can do, though. We saw Jared Dawson, who I saw almost nothing from in the first 2 practices, meaning like literally didn't see him do much of anything in the first 2. He was okay in the Jersey scrimmage. He was really good in the Blue Gold game. That was a question mark. How would he fit into this defense? We were super disruptive in the Blue Gold game. Elijah Hughes was solid. I thought he performed well. And Jason Onye had a really good spring. And Armo Mukum continued to get better and better every time we saw him. So I feel really good about where the defensive tackle room is and where they are. And I feel, take out the ranking, they are significantly better now. My confidence level in them is significantly better now than where it was pre-spring, and even more than where it was before the Jersey scrimmage, because Marcus Freeman, again, something he said yesterday, he's like, look, there's no Riley Mills basically in this room, or there's no one that's going to replace the production of Riley Mills and Howard Cross, but we've got so many guys that can go play. And so you have guys with different skill sets. You got some guys that are pass rushers, some guys that are more run stuff, or some guys that are a little dual threat. But you see all the production from this group. It may not have a All-American like Riley Mills was last year or Howard Cross was 2 years ago. But I won't be shocked if the overall production, especially against the run game, is better this year than last year, because even you look at, we talked about Rubio, talked about Onye, talked about Heinisch, we talked about Dawson, Hughes, Mukum. Haven't got into how well I thought Sean Sevillano played in the 2 scrimmages in his limited snaps. So Brendan Vernon, I thought, played really well in the Jersey scrimmage. He then got hurt, but we were told, Marcus Freeman said he'll be back. I think he said July. So you feel better about that? So I thought I feel way better about the D tackle room. The reason that they dropped down for us, and Trev, I'll let you get into this, is because they grade out higher now. If we were doing it, like if we were doing like a grade, the D tackle grade would be higher today than it was when we did this show a few weeks ago. The problem for them, as far as a ranking standpoint, is the safety grade went up even higher. And that's really what it's about. Sometimes you fall in the rankings, and it's kind of like what we were talking about yesterday in recruiting. It's not so much that I think less of you. It's just I think way more of that group now. And we certainly thought about that when you look at the safety group. It's more so about what they've done to raise up to number 3, more so than anything that the defensive tackles didn't do, because they played really well in the 2 scrimmages we saw. Still need to be more consistent, but very impressed with them. But boy, the safety play, Trev, is even without Jalen Stroman and Brandon Logan was really impressive this spring. Really impressive.
The internal conversation that I had with myself between the defensive tackles and safeties was my hardest decision in making these lists. More so than anything that I had to decide on offense, and then more so than flipping the 1s and 2s on this list. Because after watching how well the defensive tackles performed, it was so hard to justify moving them down. But look, man, the safety room, I think, was the room that I had either the most very close amount of questions about, tied with the D-line. But safeties, you're replacing Xavier Watts. And all of the guys behind it, ceilings athletically very, very high. They're taller, they're longer, they're faster, but I didn't know what that was going to be. And you guys know me by now. I'm a show me person. And man, the safety room showed me some stuff between the blue gold game and the jersey scrimmage. Stuff that I didn't even know was going to be a strength of their game. I think of a guy like Tay Johnson. You know, he's a little bit lighter. He's rangy. He's long. We know that he can cover. I mean, shoot, he can cover well enough for the defensive coaching staff to be comfortable moving him to back up Leonard Moore last season. Now they moved him back to safety. Question I had that I didn't really know about him was his willingness to go and kind of stick his nose in there and make plays around the line of scrimmage, come down and fill alleys and play the run game. We found that out in a big way in the jersey scrimmage. He was all over the field. Luke Talich, we had heard a lot about his communication and his prowess in the room. And I don't think anybody had questions about like his hitting ability or his tackling ability, but what he was able to do in coverage in some plays in the jersey scrimmage, what he was able to do from a leadership standpoint between the blue gold game and the jersey scrimmage, that showed a lot of promise to me. And all the stuff that we had seen and heard about from Jadon Blair, man, that guy's going to be a problem for
him. And we didn't get to see that in the blue gold game. He had a very minor injury tweak. I was told the day before the practice before the spring game, he had a little minor injury tweak, and I was told that came after he'd already picked off like 2 or 3 passes in the practice. So yeah, and yeah. I'm looking back at it now. Did Bronte start Did he start at safety? Because I know he's with the ones when CJ Carr was in there, but I think he was also with the ones looking at it now.
I have it in my notes.
Still 7-on-7. Trying to get past the 7-on-7 period. I'm trying to see if he was the safety though. No, it looks like it was Luke Talich was out there with the first group.
Yeah.
But the second time they put the ones out on the field, Bronte was out there. So yeah, he performed well.
Yep. And we didn't even talk about Tabron Benny Powell, who also made some plays in the blue gold game, man.
Have we talked about Luke Talich?
I have.
Yeah. That was a rhetorical question. I'm getting ready to talk about Luke Talich. So it's a rhetorical question. Sorry. You suck, Trev. You didn't bring up Luke Talich. You're terrible. I'm talking about a guy that had 9 tackles and 3 tackles for loss in the blue gold game.
Mm-hmm.
You know, him and Kingston having those stops at the line of scrimmage. I mean, he looked pretty good. I hope that anyone watching that game came away with like, hey, let's chill out with this whole Luke Talich can't run stuff. Because if you watch this game, you know, you're going to come away with a little bit of a different impression. But dude, Tabron Benny Powell, Ethan Long had a really nice play in the jersey scrimmage, breaking up a seam route to Jack Larson. Like he had a nice play there. He was okay in this one. So, it's like you just look at this group. I mean, the guy that had the worst performance in the spring game was a Don Schuler.
Honestly,
he got beat twice on deep balls, and he was right there both times. You know, on the second one, he was right there. It's just a great throw and a great catch. But I mean, Don probably had the roughest day. Ben Minnick had a pick. playing nickel. He's still a safety. He had a pick. I mean, this group, and the thing is, it wasn't just the blue gold game or the jersey scrimmage. They played great in both. They played really, really well in both, Trev. And I feel, and we didn't even see Jalen Stroman at all. We only saw Jadon Blair in the jersey scrimmage. You're just like, dude, this group is absolutely loaded. And they get Brandon Logan and Jalen Stroman this summer. So I thought about putting them ahead of the corners, honestly. But obviously the starters are just so good. It was because of the depth. And if Carson Hobbs hadn't played as well as he did in the two practices we saw, and we'll get to that in a minute, I probably would have put the safeties ahead of the corners if it wasn't for Carson Hobbs' performance. Because I'm like, yeah, the corners are better starters, but the 3, 4, 5, and 6 at safety are way better right now than where the corners are, because there's no Dallas Golden, there's no Mark Zachary. Like, there's still guys that got to show up. But man, safety room was really, really good. Really, really good. Obviously, you weren't going to put them behind the corners because you have corners number one, but I did. I really thought I was really impressed with the performance of the Notre Dame safeties this spring. And they look like they're really taking well to what Chris Ash is trying to do.
Yeah.
Which is, they're playing some cover 2. Like Tabron did some nice things. I think he was the guy, I believe it might have been, it's either him or Ethan Long at the end of the game that didn't do a very good job of getting off the hash. I think it might have been Ethan Long. You got to do a better job getting off the hash on that last touchdown pass, but that was a young guy, and that stuff will come there. The first team was doing a better job of that. And just overall, I thought the play of the safeties in this game was really good. So now we get into 2-1, Trev.
Mm-hmm.
And well, is there more you want to say about the safeties before we move on to 2-1?
The only thing I was going to say about the safety, I think out of all 10 of the position groups that we're talking about today, they answered the most amount of questions for me.
Of all 10 position groups?
Mm-hmm.
Tell me why.
Because I
think that's a very interesting. Because I think I said that about tight end.
Mm-hmm.
You're saying about safety, so I'm very curious as to that one.
For me, when I look at the safety room, I had a lot of questions around just what their abilities were going to be on the field, because I hadn't seen it. I mean, the potential was there. Like, you heard about how athletic Bronte Tay Johnson was. You heard about the length that Jadon Blair brought to the table. You heard about, Luke Talich's ability, and he can run, and he is a physical player. But outside of a very few moments from just Luke Talich, I just had no idea what that was going to look like. And for me, it was like, okay, the thing that separated it from me, and tight end is the second group on that list for me, is I look at it in filling starting roles. Like, if Luke Talich had to go in and start, it's like, all right, here we go. If Tay Johnson had to go in and start, it's like, all right, let's ride. Jadon Blair had to go in and start. All right, let's go. But in the tight end room, the separating factor for me is like, okay, if Eli Raridan goes down, state of the room now, it's like, all right, Kevin Bauman's going to start. It's a little bit more iffy if I was playing the comparison game of like my comfortability level between having Kevin Bauman start versus having like Tay Johnson start instead of Luke Talich, or, Jadon Blair start instead of Jalen Stroman. So it's close, but that's kind of where I was at with safeties. They answered the most amount of questions for me, like raised my comfort level significantly.
So we'll do with 2-1, kind of like what we did with the O-line and the quarterbacks in the last one. So I'll have you talk about, you actually flipped cornerbacks and linebackers.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll talk about the linebackers, or you'll talk about the linebackers and corners, and you had the linebackers kind of down to 2. Let's talk about what you saw from that group this spring. And then we'll kind of finish it with well, first of all, was it more about what you saw from the corners that jumped them? So then the linebackers, there was no issues, no disappointments, things like that. So let's talk about what you did see from the linebackers then this spring, about why you – because if this is one of the best defenses in the country, if you're number 2, you're still pretty flipping good.
Yeah.
Let's talk about what you saw from the linebackers this spring, Trev.
Yeah. So again, I'm going to have a similar conversation with the corners from like Drake Bowen. Same thing with corners, Christian Gray and Leonard Moore. Didn't see much, but they're the Jeremiah Loves for me. I don't have to see a lot from them to be like, oh, this was a really, really good spring. And so when I go and I look at what the linebackers did, I'm trying to think of a way to word this. The novelty of Jalen Sneed putting on the weight and still being able to move only carried me so far. The first two practices that we got to see was like, okay, he put on weight. He's still able to move well. He's still explosive. Well, we've been able to say that about Jalen Sneed his entire career at Notre Dame. He's fast. He's explosive. He's twitchy. Those tools have always been there. For me, I wanted to see that next step as a linebacker, and we saw flashes. But in the blue gold game, we saw that there were still some of the lingering issues from last season. Now, again, like we talked about at the end of the first segment, I don't look for this to be a complete team at the end of April. And so I don't think Jalen Sneed is done progressing. But I would have liked to see a little bit more from the oldest guy in that room. And so that's where I was with Jalen Sneed. Jaden Ausberry, and you can look at this positively as well, which I also do. He had a relatively quiet spring. Like there was nothing that he did in the Jersey scrimmage or the blue gold game where I was like, yep, that's Jaden Ausberry. But there was nothing that he did in the Jersey scrimmage or the blue gold game where I was like, Jaden, like what? You know what I mean? And so for him, it was just, he was steady, played well. And then I look at Kingston. I think out of the four linebackers between Bowen, Kingston, Sneed, and Ausberry, I think he was the most, he stuck out the most to me in the spring. You know, he shed a little bit of weight. He's a year older. He's back to being healthy again. He doesn't have that much of a knee issue anymore. I thought he played really well this spring. You know, another thing that factored into me ranking them at 2 was, you know, there is a battle right now going on for Will linebacker. And who's going to start alongside Drake Bowen in the defense. Nobody really took command of that battle in my eyes. And so the two most flashy players that stuck out to me were throughout the spring was honestly Kingston and Preston Zinner. You know, and so that's kind of where I was at. But more so my rankings for linebackers and corners was more so what I saw from the corners than anything the linebackers did poorly. Because things I'm talking about with Jaden Ausberry, you know, and Jalen Sneed, like they're very, I don't want to call it minor, but it's not like they played poorly. It's just there's things that I would have liked to see that I might not have gotten to see that I did see from some of the corners.
I think that's very fair. Here's what I saw from I don't disagree with a lot of what you said about the linebackers. I don't think that they played great this spring. I don't think they played bad this spring.
Yeah.
I think Jalen Sneed was better than what he was in the fall, but he still showed that there's still some issues there. I mean, again, that first run of the game, first play of the game, he steps in the hole and just gets whiffed. A couple times he made himself too blockable. You know, those things still need to get better. I didn't see Jaden Ausberry take that jump this spring that I hoped we'd see. Well, he didn't take a step back either, so it means he's still at least a good football player, like the guy that finished second on the defense last year in tackles for loss. You know, Drake Bowen was Drake Bowen. I mean, you can see he's taken over more command, but we didn't see him like make a ton of plays. He didn't get a lot of chances to make a ton of plays. Didn't play a lot of snaps in the spring game or in the Jersey scrimmage. But to your point, the reason that I held the linebackers number 1 is because I don't think no one took any steps back. We saw Kingston, in my opinion, the last 2 periods look even better than he was. I mean, we talked about after the Jersey scrimmage, the play he made that I thought showed a lot of growth was a play in the Jersey scrimmage where he didn't even make the play. Yeah, safety did. But he knew the gap he was supposed to hit, and he hit it hard, and he blew it up. He forces the spill. The guy has to bounce outside. So what I mean bounce outside is he couldn't just go outside. He had to bounce like behind Kingston, who blew up a blocker, and then all of a sudden safety's fitting off of Kingston, and he makes the play. So in the stat sheet, if you're not watching the game, just look at the stat sheet, you don't see anything on there about Kingston Williams making that play. But he made that play.
Yeah.
The safety just cleaned it up. He did the hard part. The safety did the easy part, you know, which is tackling the guy with no momentum and space outside in the perimeter. And we saw a lot of stuff like that. And then, of course, we still saw the flash, which we saw in those back-to-back plays near the goal line where him and Luke Towers just blew up those back-to-back runs. So I feel even better about Kingston. He's moving better than he is now. Like, he's the one guy of all the linebackers that that played last year that you most noticeably saw improvement from this spring, in my view. Where the others are just kind of like, yeah, they're just kind of where they were. They're just, steadily improving. He's the guy that made a jump. Like Drake is just kind of steadily improving. Osborne's just kind of steadily improving. Nothing like noticeable. Well, that should be expected because they were already a year ahead of Kingston. They made this jump a year ago.
Yeah.
And now Kingston's making that jump, which is very encouraging because he was pretty good last year as a true freshman. And, I still think if he doesn't get hurt against Army, he's probably a freshman All-American. I think he would have been. One group did have him as a freshman All-American, but I think it would have been more consensus.
Yeah.
So to see him kind of make a bit of a jump this spring and still be powerful on a slimmed down version, a version that's running better, I'm still not used to the hair. Like, I'm serious. Like sometimes, like, who was that? I'm like, who was that? Who made that play? Whereas before, I'm like, oh, look at that play Kingston made because the hair. So that took a little getting used to, but then you're like, oh, that was 27. Yep, figures. Figures. But Preston Zinner, I thought, had a really good spring. Jersey scrimmage, he was really good. And then, of course, we saw as a linebacker, he played linebacker, like off-ball linebacker in the Jersey scrimmage. Mm-hmm. And then he had some edge rushes in the blue gold game. That was good to see. I thought another reason that the linebacker for me is where it was is I thought Bodie Cahoon had a great spring. Like, I feel so much better about the middle linebacker depth moving forward because, like, I would feel better now if they felt Kingston just had to start. Like, we've got to start 27. So we're going to move him to full-time Will, and he's going to – and we don't want him cross-trained. We just want him focusing on being the best Will in the country. We don't want to cross-train him. If they made that decision, I'm not saying they're going to, make it a point. I'd have no problem if Bodie Cahoon was your backup middle linebacker behind Drake.
Sure.
Like, give him 10 snaps a game so Drake can get some breathers and, like, let's roll. I'm not saying that's what I would do. I'm just making a point. That's how well Bodie played this spring. Now, still things he's got to clean up. He doesn't go 100 miles an hour every snap. There's still snaps you can tell he's a little bit uncertain of what he's supposed to do. That needs to get worked out, but the athleticism is there. The power is there. And there's less of those snaps now than there was when we saw him in the fall. Like, he had a really good spring, in my opinion. And that helps solidify, because, like, one of the reasons that I'm going to guess that one of the reasons that the corners are now number one for you is the performance of Carson Hobbs. Is that fair?
One of.
Part of it. Like, so one of. That's kind of how I feel about the linebackers with what I saw from Kingston and Preston Zinner and Bodie Cahoon, that the depth is even better now than it was before, and none of the known commodities took a step back. And so that's why that group still remains numero uno for me. It may not be there when we get to the summer, when Dallas Golden shows up, Mark Zachary shows up, and we've got some intel about how the summer workouts have gone. But for now, that's why they stay number one for me, Trev. Now, you flipped the corners and linebackers. So let's talk about the corners, because as you said, it had nothing to do with linebackers weren't as good as I hoped. It was more so about what you saw from corners. So let's talk about why the corners are your new number one position group.
Yeah, so for me, Carson Hobbs played a big role in that. I was very uncertain about what the depth at corner was going to be this spring. I am to the point now where if Carson Hobbs has to start a game, I am so comfortable, honestly, at multiple positions. And I think that's what set it over the top for me for Carson Hobbs. He can go start at the nickel if he needs to. He can go start at field corner or boundary corner if he needs to. He had a really, really good spring. I think the emergence of Cree Thomas, because I took into account the freshmen, like the early enrollee freshmen in these two, just to see what they were going to. I don't put too much weight into it, but Cree Thomas had a really good spring, and he's somebody that you and I were both high on coming into campus. That also kind of separated him from, when we talk about the early enrollee true freshman on defense, came in and made a splash, and Jadon Blair's making plays. Cree Thomas is having a really good spring. The other cornerbacks in the room are really talking about how well he was doing. And then, we talk about Madden Faremo, who was also in the linebacker room. He was around for some bowl practices as well, and he's still figuring out kind of which way is north and south. When he does get it figured out, dude's going to be lethal, but it's just one of those where it's like, okay, in comparing of the three big name early enrollee true freshmen on defense, that was kind of the one that took the backseat to Cree Thomas and Jadon Blair. Thought he had a really good spring.
I named 7 linebackers and never mentioned him. That to me is why the linebackers are still my number one.
Sure.
But you're correct. When the light goes on for Madden, he's going to be a monster.
Yeah. Bodie Cahoon was a really tough, because bringing him up for the depth of the linebackers, the thing that separated it for me between like a Bodie Cahoon and a Carson Hobbs is, you mentioned that it's like there's still some plays where he's not at 100 miles an hour because he's figuring out where to go. And to me, Carson Hobbs has figured out where to go. Like he played really, really well in both scrimmages from what we saw. Now it could be a situation where there's some practices he could have struggled. Yeah.
The issues he had this spring were more at nickel. Like he got beat by Jaden Greathouse early in the game. Like first drive of the game.
Yep.
That's at nickel. He's still learning that position as a corner. And like that, the tough part's like, where do we put Devontae Smith?
Yeah.
Right. Like in this, I kind of count him as a corner. That's one of the concerns I still have, is that depth at nickel. But to your point though, but if I have to put Carson Hobbs in the game at field corner or boundary corner, I don't think that you're going to get the same type of I'll let you finish, but like the issues that we did see Carson have in the Jersey scrimmage and the blue gold game were at nickel, which is not his primary position yet. That's his, hey, we like what you've done at corner. Let's see what you can do here now. But he had to establish himself at corner first.
Yeah.
And to your point, that's what I think he did this spring, is establish himself on the outside first.
Oh, yeah. And the jump that he made from the Jersey scrimmage to the blue gold game at nickel, I think is promising, because that was just in a week. Not that he was overly proficient at nickel in the blue gold game, but where he was at a week prior in the Jersey scrimmage was night and day in my eyes. He made a really big jump. And so, that's for me, you have the starters where they're at. Same thing with the linebackers. But I don't think anybody took a step back from the known commodities. And I think the depth was really rounded out. I do. And again, to your point, that's before we get Dallas Golden and Mark Zachary into the conversation here. And so, that's kind of what set it over for me. But the two depth pieces in Carson Hobbs and Cree Thomas is kind of what put it over the top. So a lot of what you said about linebackers is what I would echo for corners. But again, like I said in the original show, for me, these lists were the 1A, 1Bs.
Yeah.
And now I just basically switched my 1As and 1Bs.
I still have some question marks about the depth of corner, because Cree Thomas, if you had to play a game today and you had to put Carson Hobbs in the game, he's not as good as Christian Gray and Leonard Moore, but I'm good. I'm comfortable. I'm good there.
Yep.
Just like if you had to put Christian Gray in the game in 2023, he was not as good as Benjamin Morrison or Cam Hart, but he was still really good.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I feel to a degree about Carson now that he's a sophomore. But I don't feel that same way about Cree yet. Now, Cree was good. Cree was a surprise. I liked what I saw. He's going to be a good player. He's not where Leonard Moore was in the fall. Now, he may get there. We're talking about the spring.
Yeah.
But I'm not as comfortable putting him in the game if I need to right now.
Yeah.
We saw him get beat on a post route in the Jersey scrimmage that got dropped. We saw him a couple times just not look super comfortable. He's still learning that position. He's still learning the finer points of that position. But then after that, you're literally your number 3 group is walk on still. That's really the concern I still have. And it's the same reason that I had the corners number 2 last time.
Sure.
I don't know that there's a better starting 1-2 punch anywhere on defense than Christian Gray and Leonard Moore. I just don't know if there is. But as we've seen in a lot of years, you need more than 2 corners. It was true in 2018. It was true in 2020. It was true in 2021. It was true in 2022. It was true in 2023. And it was definitely true last year. And right now, I don't feel as comfortable with what's behind the starters. I feel better now because of Carson Hobbs' emergence, but I need to see him continue to build on what he did this spring also. But I just after that, Cree's not there yet. Cree's more of where Bodie Cahoon is, and I love the example that you use with Bodie, but here's the difference. Bodie's 3rd or 4th string right now.
Sure.
And Cree Thomas is your number 2 boundary corner. And that depth is really what it comes down to for me. That's why I say when you get Mark Zachary and you get Dallas Golden, and keep forgetting Chance Tucker comes back as well this summer. I think Coach Freeman mentioned him as somebody else that's going to be cleared for spring workouts, which is great to hear. You're going to get him back as well. I'm going to feel better about that group once I hear about how quickly Dallas and Mark Zachary are adapting, because now if Cree's your number 2, it's because he's held off those talented young guys, not because after that it's a walk-on.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where I'm at with those positions. And then when you throw Devontae Smith in the mix, we didn't see a ton of Devontae this spring. We just didn't. And they didn't play him a whole lot this spring. But when we did see him, the limited reps, he was very impressive. I mean, you saw the first drive of the game, he just rides Jaden Greathouse out of bounds on a slot fade. Like, he's been impressive so far. It's just we haven't seen a ton of it. But I have liked what I've seen so far from him at corner. Right?
The thing that gives me confidence about Devontae Smith is the coaching staff is also treating him like a known commodity. Yes. Like he's treating he's being treated in the same light that a Leonard Moore.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And that's what gives me a little bit of confidence of like, okay, maybe we don't have to. I would have loved to see from a fan aspect of like, I haven't seen him in the blue gold that much. When I have, it's been impressive. But they were treating him because he did start 12 games at the nickel at Bama.
Right.
And so that does give me a little bit more confidence.
Yeah, it's if Mike Mickens doesn't feel he needs to see more from a guy, then there's a level of like, okay, I'm pretty sure he's going to be good, But to your point, I do want to see more of it, and it's hard for me to evaluate and give a boost to the corners for his presence when we just didn't see a lot of them.
Sure,
that's where we're at, but. It's one of those, if I'm trusting the coaches, then I'm going to feel pretty good about that one. But as I've said a million times, I trust the coaches. That doesn't mean that we just, repeat the company line and just say everything is awesome and then they don't ever make mistakes. We have to see it for our own. And this isn't even that. This is just, I need to see more of it from my own eyes.
Yeah.
That's all. And it's hard for me with how limited we've seen Devontae Smith to use him as a reason to put the corners back number 1. But that's why I keep saying, don't be shocked if by the time we get to when we do this show in July, and I've gotten intel on how Mark Zachary is done and how Dallas Golden is done and how Chance Tucker's coming back from injury, and then we get to see more of Devontae Smith, if my answer is a little different. Because we'll probably do, depending on how much access we get in the summer, we'll probably, like for fall camp, we'll probably do one of these before fall camp and then do one of these before the season. Just depending if there's any changes or not. But I'm sure once we get through summer workouts, I'm confident that the corners will have a great shot to move up to number 1. And if they don't, that most likely means because the linebackers are making bigger jumps. But that's why I still have the corners number 2, Trev, is I don't disagree with your assessments of Hobbs or Thomas. It's just the issue that I have is it stops there.
Sure.
Because after that, you're just like if one corner gets hurt, you don't have a 2 deep of scholarship corners. Now, Isaiah Dunn had a pretty nice pick in the Jersey scrimmage. So he's probably sitting at home like, hold on a second. What about me? Like, I'm the dude that, and he's right. But you're not going to go beat Alabama and Georgia. And that's what the ultimate standard is by playing that at corner,
Absolutely.
So
absolutely.
That's why I'm just not quite ready yet to put them on that same level.
Sure.
But man, it's putting a group that has, think about this. We put a group that has Bryce Young, Josh Burnham, Junior Tuilamaka, Cole Mullins last on the defense. How good do you have to be on defense that position group is ranked last?
Oh, I'm still getting over the fact that I put a group of DBs at Notre Dame first. Like, it is not that long ago.
I'm not upset about it.
No, like it's not that long ago where I would be having discussions with people about Notre Dame. It's like, yeah, dude, linebackers, pretty good. D-line, filthy. Corners are good, but I mean, now sitting here and we're talking about, there'd be years where if Cree Thomas was the depth, it's like, Notre Dame's defensive backfield might be pretty decent this fall. Now we're talking about, it's like, he's the only 2 deep. Like, All right. I guess we'll have to wait. I mean, it's such good conversations to have, man. It's awesome.
Yeah. It's a talented group. And I'm sure that Mike Mickens might be like, hold on a second. How are my groups not both number one? Well, 1 and 2. But it's going to be interesting to see how these rankings are impacted by the additions. Because the offense is getting some very important additions. You look at Malachi Field, you talk about Micah Gilbert, Ashton Craig, but I think there's more additions, Ty Washington and James Flanagan, but I think there's more additions that could play, arguably more additions on defense. Because you're going to get Jalen Stroman, you're going to get Dallas Golden, Mark Zachary, you're going to get Boubacar Traore, potentially Jordan Patelho. You're going to get Chris Burgess. Like, there's a lot of guys that can play, and heaven forbid there's some mass exodus due to injuries at linebacker. You're getting Anthony Saka and Kahanu Kia back. Yeah. You're getting Anthony Saka arrives this summer, and then you're also Coach Freeman said Kahanu Kia was one of the guys that was cleared for the summer. Well, who was one of the spring breakouts last year was Kahanu Kia.
Yeah.
So you're getting a lot more back of potential, even more potential impact players at this position on this side of the ball, even than offense. The ones on offense are important, but I think this group is going to get even more reinforcements coming this. That's a good article idea, by the way, Trev. Make a note of that. So the defense, as good as it has been all spring, is getting a lot more reinforcements of guys can help you right now. And that's a pretty. The other thing that I was interested in, the D line has a lot of like seniors listed and fifths listed on the starting lineup in the 2 deep, but after that, there's like none. There's the thing about Devontae Smith is the only second or third level starter that's out of eligibility after the season.
I just for fun the other day, I made a list of players who have the opportunity to return in 2026.
It's a long list.
Dude, it's like the same team.
It's not a lot of guys that aren't on it.
Like
offensively, it's just Malachi, Pauling, and Raridan, right? That can't come back. Am I forgetting somebody? They're the only guys that can't come back after next year.
Mm-hmm.
Defensively, it's just Rubio, Onye,
Dawson,
Smith, and Junior. Because I keep forgetting that Junior played a lot of special teams as a freshman.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
Yeah.
Now, again, that doesn't mean they're all going to come back. I mean, we could be talking about Jeremiah. I mean, if Jeremiah Love comes back in 2026, most likely something bad happened. It's an injury or something. I hope that doesn't happen. That's what I keep saying. Like, do you want Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price come back next year? I'm like, no. Because if they come back, it most likely means something bad happened to one or two of them.
Yep.
I want Jeremiah Love to be a first-round draft pick next year. And I want Jadarian Price to be a second-round draft pick next year. That's what I want, selfishly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, and Patelho potentially as well. That is another guy. Forgot about, potentially him. So I often – his knee injury is a little bit trickier for me to feel comfortable knowing where he is without them telling us. But I believe he was also on the list of players that Marcus Freeman said are going to be cleared for the summer.
Yep.
So a lot of impact production coming back this spring, Trev.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he has Brendan Vernon back by July, Boubacar Traore, Kahanu Kia, Jordan Patello, Ashton Craig are full go in the summer. Gerby Lambert, Davian Dixon will continue to work back into full activities into the summer. And then Cooper Flanagan won't return until the fall.
Yeah, and I don't think he'll return even in fall camp. I think that's one of those that he's going to be out for a long time. Very interesting. And Davion Dixon, we haven't talked a lot about him, but I heard a lot of good things about him during winter workouts, that they were really impressed by how much he attacked the weight room. So he's another guy that potentially could 6'3", 6'2", 320-pound guy. You're adding that to your D-tackle rotation. So it's going to be fun, man. It's going to be fun. Hey, Trev, that's going to do it for the defensive breakdown. We're going to do mailbag next. We do have some good mailbag questions. And then, of course, tomorrow at 1 o'clock, we're going to have the Friday free-for-all mailbag, so we're going to have that as well. But we're going to do just a little IB mailbag today. We'll go for about an hour or until the questions run out. But before we get there, folks, do us a favor. See that thumbs up underneath you? We'd greatly appreciate if you guys could hit that for us and just let us know that you appreciate the work that we do. Just because you don't agree with the premise or just because you don't like a topic doesn't mean you should hit a thumbs down. You hit a thumbs down if you think that you don't like our show or don't think we do a good job or whatever. But we would always appreciate if you like it, even if you don't like our show, but you want to make sure that we're still here so we can provide you with things to get angry about. Still hit that thumbs up. So that helps us continue to grow and continue to keep this thing going. And it lets the algorithm know, like, this is something that people that type in Notre Dame into their searches needs to be hearing. And so we would greatly appreciate that. But of course, as always, the absolute best way to support what we're doing at Irish Breakdown is to sign up for the premium message board at boards.irishbreakdown.com. You can sign up for a monthly membership, an annual membership, or, Trev, you can join a booster club. And if you join one of the 3 booster clubs, you get some free IB merch shipped to your house, right to your house. Our guy, John A1, joined the Shamrock Club or the Gold Club, one of those 2 recently. He just sent me a picture. He got his IB Club mug the other day, so that was awesome. Had somebody that got an IB Club mug sent to their house a few months ago, and it was broken. So we sent them a brand new one, free of charge for them. So we'll make sure we take care of you. But that's the only time I've ever had, and we've had hundreds of mugs either bought or shipped out because of the booster clubs. Never had that issue, but we'll take care of it if for some reason it does. But you want to check that out at boards.irishbreakdown.com.
All righty. It's mailbag time. In the words of Salty Virginia Peanuts, ain't no bag like a mailbag. So let's dive right in. Aiden Benami, if you had first pick in the draft and need a quarterback, would you pick a quarterback with only 1 year starting experience? For example, Arch Manning. Not sure I could do that myself. Quarterback is risky to go off just potential, in my opinion.
There would be some factors into it. In just without a whole lot of context, if it's close, I'd feel real nervous about taking a guy with 1 year experience. Like, we've seen a lot of busts with 1 year of starting experience. Trey Lance, Dwayne Haskins, Mitch Trubisky. Like, we've seen that a lot. We've even seen a lot of guys who struggled for their whole careers and only started for 1 year have those issues. Mac Jones is another one that was a 1 year starter that hasn't really done a whole lot in the NFL. We've seen some guys who kind of struggled their whole career and then have that one final season and they get picked, like Zach Wilson, who was kind of an average quarterback until he had that monster year during the COVID year, and all of a sudden he gets drafted number 2 overall. So I'm just not – but there are times when you do see guys that have played 1 year that are successful. I prefer to have more of a proven commodity. And the more you play, the more teams can find your weaknesses, which means you've got a counter and all that type of stuff. In today's game, though, it can be a little bit different, Trev, because now, like, you look at a guy like Arch Manning, for example. Well, what if Texas plays for the national title last year? Then Arch is creeping up on like 20 career starts now. He's getting close to that. I mean, he had, 2 or 3 this year, and if he starts 16 next year, I mean, that's a little bit more than just a guy that played a 12-game regular season in a bowl game.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of high leverage situations in there. Plus, a guy like Arch played in some high leverage situations last year off the bench. I mean, he played against Ohio State. You played against Georgia in both games. And so it's a little bit different for him specifically. But in theory, I get real nervous about picking a guy that's only played 1 year at all in the first round, much less number 1. So I would prefer more than that if possible. But if you need a quarterback and he's by far the best in the draft, like that's what made the picks of some of these other guys so dumb, Trev, is it wasn't like the Bears were desperate for a quarterback and Mitch Trubisky's sitting there and the next best option is like Kenny Pickett. Like, you're sitting there with that pick at number 2, and you also had this guy named Deshaun Watson coming in that draft, and you also had this guy named Patrick Mahomes in that draft. You weren't so desperate that you had to take one of those. I mean, that's what I always found so kind of nuts about that. And then, like, when you talked about like taking Trey Lance, I mean, you had Justin Fields, who's a multi-year starter. You had Mac Jones, Kyle Trask maybe, but I didn't think it was a great quarterback class. So these teams get desperate for quarterbacks and they overdraft for quarterbacks. Well, that's on you. You're the one that overdrafted. But yeah, I just like Anthony Richardson. He's another example. But it's not just one-year guys that bust in the NFL either. There's some multi-year starters who bust out too. But I just would feel a lot better investing that type of money into a guy that's a little bit more of an established commodity. That's just kind of my 2 cents.
Yeah, I mean, if I were a GM, I don't think there's a good clear-cut answer. I think it would depend on what my team needs and what that would dictate for my team. But I always err on the side of more experience because there's just more scenarios, different types of defenses that you've seen opposed to just one-year starters. And so it would depend on what kind of offensive system that one-year starter had in college. It would depend on what kind of tools that one-year starter brought to the table. And it also depends on what kind of, what kind of coach I'm going to, because there's coaches in the NFL that are known significantly more for developing quarterbacks than others. It depends on the situation you're going to. Like if I had a guy that was like towards the tail end of his career, like a Matt Stafford, I would take a flyer on a guy at the end of a first round if he was a good enough fit for my team to learn for a year or two under a Matt Stafford, and so it really just depends, man. But I'm more along the lines with Brian of just generally speaking, I would err on the side of a multi-year starter. USMA 87, what are your expectations for portal entries the next 2 days? Over, under 4.5 players?
I'm not touching that. I mean, we'll see. I think the number that I gave at the beginning of spring was higher than that because we were anticipating them having to get down to 105. In order to do that, you'd still need 11 guys on your roster to jump in the portal. Or either their choice or you're telling them they have to. With the sort of, it looks like there's at least going to be a pause there because one of two things is going to happen. Either the NCAA is going to take Judge Wilkins' counsel, change the roster limit thing to where it's either grandfathered or over time, or they're going to, the NCAA is going to reject their advice, which then means she rules against the House settlement, period. And both of those result in no changes to the roster because the whole roster thing was part of the House settlement. So if the House settlement's blown up because the NCAA doesn't want to take it, which they're stupid enough to do that. They are. Let's be honest. The NCAA, they're stupid enough to do that. Then that's kind of what's going to happen. Either way, I think that there's at least going to be a 1 year reprieve to that.
Yeah.
Barring something dramatic happening. So that changes things a little bit. But I still expect guys to jump in the portal. I think some things have changed a little bit with this decision. So we'll see. I'm a little surprised by the lack of activity, to be honest with you. But we'll see how the next couple days plays out.
Reese Briner, who do you think will be the first Notre Dame player off the board? And do you think any of them go in the first round?
It's unlikely. I was talking with somebody about this last night. It's unlikely. I think the best bet actually is probably Xavier Watts to sneak in late, where some team like the Bills or the Niners, some of those real Chiefs, those real smart, savvy teams that just tend to draft great late in the first round, who needs that kind of takes him late. It's most likely, from what I was told last night, they're both going in round 2, potentially maybe falling into round 3, depending on how the board shakes out. But it'll either be Watts or Morris, Xavier Watts or Benjamin Morrison will be the first two. If those two both go off the board in round 2, it might be a while before anybody else goes. Riley Mills has had some really variance in his draft projections. 3rd round to not drafted at all. Jack Kaiser's been like 4 through 6. I saw one the other day that I put up. RJ Oben was in round 6. You've got Howard Cross is projected in round 7. I've seen Riley Leonard get projected in round 7. He's the one guy that I think could go much higher. 2 things could happen. One is there's a run on quarterbacks, and that boosts him up, like what happened with Ian Book. Part of the reason Ian Book got drafted where he did is because there was a run on quarterbacks, and you had 5 quarterbacks get taken in the first 15 picks, and then the Buccaneers took Kyle Trask with the last pick of the 2nd round, and you're sitting there like, dude, there's not a whole lot of quarterbacks left. So then the round 3 starts, and Kellen Mond gets picked, and Davis Mills get picked like back to back at the beginning of round 3, and you're like, there's not a whole lot of draftable quarterbacks on the board left. And so then that's kind of why the Saints reached for Ian Book, because of that. Something like that happens again tonight, and then tomorrow on day 2, then you could see Riley Leonard jump up, or team could fall in love with him. Like if Jalen Milroe's a 2nd-round draft pick, which I'm seeing, then frickin' Riley Leonard's a 2nd-round draft pick. Like, you got to be kidding me. Like, just don't even get me started on that. Some about people falling in love with just arm talent, arm strength, and confusing that with arm talent. There's a difference between the two. The fact that Joe Milton's probably going to get drafted higher than Riley Leonard is exactly why the NFL sucks at evaluating quarterbacks, and why there's so many misses when it comes to evaluating quarterbacks, is because they fall in love with crap like that. And it nonstop drives me nuts. But whatever, like Jalen Milroe's not Jalen Hurts, folks. Like, if you think you're drafting the next Jalen Hurts by getting Jalen Milroe, I think you're going to be sadly mistaken, in my opinion. Very sadly mistaken, but whatever. We'll see how it goes. But to your specific question, if I had to guess, I'd probably guess Xavier Watts, just because he doesn't have the injury history. And those smart teams look at, I want a football player, and he's a football player. I think if Benjamin Morrison didn't have the injury history, he's the no-brainer first Notre Dame guy off the board. It's just the injuries that the 2 injuries he suffered this year that are the reason why.
Good deal. Weir Wolf. The cornerbacks are a top-ranked position group. Playing freshmen will be exciting to watch. Hope it leads to more elite high school corners wanting to play early.
We're seeing that already, right? I mean, they got Dallas Golden and Mark Zachary this past class. They got Chaz Smith. Got an update on the board about Aiden Pouncey you're going to want to check out, but it's certainly having an impact.
Yeah.
What they're doing on the field is having a huge impact on how they're able to recruit. There's no doubt about it. I want to get your thoughts on this one, Trev, from Christopher Galloway. Thank you, Christopher. Christopher has a new avatar. You see that? He got rid of the one. I'm a little hurt, Chris. You got rid of the one that had the IB hat on, man. What's going on? Christopher says, which quarterback has the most NFL potential? If you were running a team, who would you pick to run your system pro style offense? What I don't know is he asking about NFL draft, or is he asking about the Notre Dame quarterbacks?
I don't know. I'll answer both. I mean,
let's have at it.
So, I mean, just real quickly, the NFL wanted CJ Carr for me, his ability to read defense. Now, Kenny Minchey could slowly creep that his way, or not slowly. He could very quickly work his way into that conversation because of his athletic ability, his strong arm. But quarterback in the NFL is just as much of a mental game as it is a physical game. Some of the greatest quarterbacks that ever walked away and played this game were not known for having rocket launchers of an arm or being overly mobile. They're very smart. Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, Joe Montana, Drew Brees, like all these guys are very intelligent, football IQ through the roof. And I get that a lot from CJ Carr. But Kenny Minchey is also an NFL caliber quarterback. But if I had to say the most, I would say CJ Carr. In the NFL draft right now.
Real quick, I agree. That's exactly how I see it. I think CJ is also the more height and all that. I agree completely. Yeah. He's the best NFL prospect they have. But I like that you added that. Look, Kenny Minchey has those tools as well.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Look, man. I watched Zach Wilson get taken in the first round. Kenny Minchey is an NFL caliber.
Number 2 overall, bro. It wasn't like he got taken in the first round. Like some team took a flyer on him on number 32. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
this is a dude that went number 2 overall.
I watched Zach Wilson get drafted because of a throw he made on his pro day.
Yeah,
like I'm telling you, man, Kenny Minchey can play in the NFL. Absolutely. As far as like the most NFL potential, I'm gonna say Jackson Dart, and it's gonna make some people upset. I like Jackson Dart, man. He reminds me of there's not a throw on the field that he can't make. He ran a similar offensive or an NFL-esque style offense under Lane Kiffin. I'd say he's up there of mine. I think Tyler Shuck is up there for me. but I like him. And both players, more so Jackson Dart, is a little bit more athletic than what Tyler Shuck is, but he's athletic enough to go play in the NFL. He can make plays with his legs if he has to, but they're not running any design plays to him. So that'd be it for me. It's not Quinn Ewers. It's not Shedeur Sanders. Cam Ward maybe, but I don't know, man.
Of all the quarterbacks in this year's draft class, Cam Ward is the one I'd feel most comfortable taking. And I don't love that because I think he turns the ball over too much. I think he has to learn to play within script a little bit. But I think what I love about Cam is he's played a lot of football.
Mm-hmm.
He's had to pick up 3 different offenses, and he's done it well. And he's evolved his game. He's more of a playmaker at Miami than he was early in his career. What I disliked about him at Washington State was he would put up a lot of yards, and I didn't feel he had impact. He didn't impact winning and losing. He just impacted putting up yards. What Cam showed me last year at Miami was his numbers were great, but he had a lot more impact in the game per production last year.
Sure.
That's the big difference between, like, there was games he'd put up big numbers and you're just like, I wasn't overly impressed. Like, he didn't make a lot of money plays, money throws. Like, you could see the talent, but he just wasn't like a winner to me. You can't watch Miami last year and still make that same criticism of Cam Ward. I can't, not in good faith. I can hold on to it because I don't want to act like I'm wrong. I wasn't wrong. I wasn't wrong then. He got better. He improved. He showed me things that he didn't show before at Washington State. And I don't think he played on that much of a better team. I think Miami was not a great team last year. He made them better.
Sure. That
matters to me in a big way. Like, you got to show me that. I've said it all the time. Are you an elevator? That's what the best players are. And that's where I don't think – I have a lot of critiques of Shedeur Sanders. I don't think he gets enough credit for that. I don't think people give Shedeur Sanders enough credit for – you take him off that team and put a lot of other quarterbacks on that team, they're not winning 9 games last year. Like, I don't think he's a first-round draft pick in the traditional sense, but he's probably the guy I'm second most comfortable with in this draft class, which says a lot about how bad this quarterback draft class is. Because I don't trust Jackson Dart at all. Tyler Shuck's like 26 years old, and he's had multiple injuries, and he still doesn't handle the blitz very well. Like, we saw that against Notre Dame. He'll make some big mistakes there. Big-time arm. But is he a guy that you're just like, I'm going to invest a first-round pick on that guy? Like, with Shedeur, I got some, not character concerns, I've got some maturity concerns. I've got some leadership concerns. I've got some, are you a me guy or a we guy? Those are my concerns. But what Shedeur did show me is he does have a good arm. It's not a great arm. It's a good arm. He's smart. He doesn't get enough credit for how smart he is on the football field. He's a pretty good decision maker. And he showed me a little bit more pocket mobility this year than he did in 2023. So I'm comfortable with him as my number 2 quarterback in this class, but nobody after Cam Ward is a first-round pick for me. I think Cam was not coming into the year. I think Cam Ward showed me something this year that I didn't know that he had that kept him from being a first-round pick. Because you take him off that team, Miami's a 5-loss team. Regular season, not bowl game, regular season.
Yeah.
They're a 7-5 team if you take Cam Ward off that team and put most other quarterbacks on that team.
Yeah.
And that mattered a whole lot to me when it comes. Now, he's still inaccurate. He's still a turnover machine. He still makes, like the Cal game, he's the reason they came back and won. He's also the reason they fell behind by 3 touchdowns.
Sure.
With some of the plays he made in that game. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But that says something to me. He can overcome his own mistakes, keep his head on straight, and go make the plays he needed to make to win. And he just showed me something. But none of these guys are like number 1 pick type guys. The only reason they are is because that NFL just completely ruined how they evaluate and draft quarterbacks. It's like if you're a number 1 quarterback in the class, you're going to get taken the top 3, unless you're very mediocre, like the year Kenny Pickett was the number 1 pick and went in the 20s. Like, I look at some of the quarterbacks that are taken like in the top 5 in recent years. You're just like, you gotta be kidding me. Like, that guy was taken number 2, but Bo Nix is taken 11th. Really? Zach Wilson's number 2, Trey Lance is number 3, but we're going to take, and I don't think Bo Nix should have gone 11. Even with what he did at Denver this year, he shouldn't have gone 11. But you had to take him at 11 because everybody else had already gotten picked. It's wild. It's really, really wild. Let's go to this one.
Keys to the car. Nice. Joined the board recently, and I absolutely love it. Could you post your 2026 dream or most likely recruiting class on the board again? I want to use it for my college football dynasty on CFB 25.
Yeah, I will. I'll kind of update that here sometime before. You're doing it on CFB 25. So if you type in, here's what you do. Type in here. You know what I'll do, Keys to the Car? I'm not going to do a new one right now. As we get closer to, a little closer to the July release of the 26 game, I'll do something new for that. But what I'm going to do right now while we're answering other questions is I'm actually going to go try to find that post that I already did, and you can use that, and we'll go there. So I have that. Actually, I just found that. And then there's one change. There's a couple changes that I'd make to it that I'll actually post in that post. So there you go. So that should be a little helpful. And then I'll go here in a little, when the show's over, I'll make a couple changes to what that prediction will be. So I'll do that for you. And welcome to the board. I appreciate that.
I am Tenzin. What more do you need to see from this team to believe 16-0 is inevitable?
There's nothing that they can do that's going to make me feel like that it's inevitable. I mean, look, you guys understand like how hard it is to go 12-0, much less 16-0. What do they need to show me? Like, so the answer is nothing. There's nothing they can show me because I'm never going to feel that way. Look, my mind doesn't work that way. Honestly, it doesn't. If they went 16-0 this year and returned to everyone from next year's team, I still wouldn't say it's inevitable that they're going to go 16-0 again. Still wouldn't say it. But when I say what makes me think that 16-0 is possible, okay, I need to just kind of see Malachi Fields catch one pass from CJ Carson. You know what I mean? You see that. But more so, I just need to see the O-line kind of come together and improve in pass pro. I need to see the defensive line kind of keep building on what they've done so far this spring. Like, I feel great about the progression of the D-line, but now I want to see guys get back and see them kind of take this next step. And I just need to see that this team can stay healthy, more healthy than they did a year ago. That's really what it comes down to. Like, I'm comfortable at quarterback. I'm comfortable with a lot of the playmakers. I need to see what Malachi Fields looks like. I need to see the O-line get better. I need to see the D-line get better. And I'll say this too, I still need to see exactly what a Chris Ash defense looks like schematically. I still don't have the answer to that. I think I know some changes that are going to happen, but I still don't know the answer to that. I just need to see him coach a game or two. That's it for me to think that 16-0 is possible. I'm not that far away from thinking it's possible now, but maybe where I'm not like, you're kind of like, dude, chill with the 16-0 stuff. Like, yeah, I could see that. That's what I need to see, but I'll never say it's inevitable, because, hey, remember what happened to the last dude that said he was inevitable? I'm just saying. He got snapped. That's all I'm saying, Trev. He got snapped out of existence.
You're right.
Just got to be careful with that.
You are right. Yeah, inevitable stuff. For it to be a possibility, need to see Will Pauling at 100%. Need to see Malachi Fields in the blue and gold. Need to see Jaden Greathouse put together more of a consistent season. I need to see them name a starting quarterback. Need to see Chris Ash defense on a game day. Need to see them have like a top-tier edge rusher. Like, I need to see this team generate a pass rush that's not involving blitzing at least 2 linebackers. I mean, I don't want to make it sound like a laundry list of things to make it sound like they have to make it back to the playoffs, but like 16-0, guys, I mean, very, very, very few teams win a national championship undefeated. And the national champions last year lost to a 6-5 team.
Lost twice.
In the final week of the regular season. I mean, it's what Nick Saban Nick Saban won how many rings, and the majority of those teams they lost in the regular season.
Yeah, they only had 2 undefeated. He had seven titles, and 2 of them were undefeated. I think it's actually his first and his last.
2009 and 2020
at Alabama. His first title overall at LSU, they had a loss as well. But I mean, I'm referring to, I think his only 2 undefeated teams at Bama were the first and last title teams that he had. They were not undefeated in 17. They didn't even play in the SEC title game in 2017. Yeah, the 2020 team went 13-0. That was a COVID year. And then you had the 2009 team went 14-0. So he won 1, 2, 3. He won 7 total titles, including LSU. And he went undefeated in 2 of them. Yeah.
It's a tough ask. So, yep. It is possible.
Ohio State won 2 titles in the playoff era. And in both of them, they lost at home to a very mediocre football team. Virginia Tech in 14 and Michigan last year.
Yep.
So, Georgia went undefeated their second title team, but their first title team didn't go undefeated. They got smacked in the SEC title game. Michigan went undefeated against a very soft schedule. And 2019 LSU went undefeated. That was one of the all-time best teams ever. Clemson in 18. Again, it's a two-round playoffs as opposed to 4 now. It's not easy.
Well, in Clemson, that 2018 team was the first national championship winner in the playoff era to go undefeated.
That's right.
And so
15 Bama had a loss. 16 Clemson lost at home to Pitt in November. 17 Bama lost. They got beat by Auburn. It was Auburn, correct? In 17? Didn't they lose to Auburn last game of the regular season?
I think so. That sounds right.
Yes, 26-14. And then they beat Clemson and Georgia in the playoffs. Scored 24 and 26 points in those games. So, yeah, because and then, of course, 14 Ohio State. So, and then you had the 3-year run in a row of undefeated teams, and then Georgia lost a game. And so it's not easy. And none of those teams had to win 3 to 4 postseason games to win a championship.
Nope.
It's just a different deal now.
Aiden Benami, part 1, just rewatch the Virginia game week show. You both said then what you're saying now about Fields. You mentioned that yesterday. Makes me even more excited and higher expectations for him. I hope he doesn't get lost with all our wide receivers and we let him go get balls.
I have zero doubt that's going to, zero doubt that he's going to get those chances. I have no thought at all of him getting lost with all the other receivers. No, and here's why I say that, Aiden. It's not at all a shot to the – he's so different than everybody else they have. And I don't mean like he's special. I mean just his entire game, body type, skill set, strengths, everything he has is so much different than anybody else they have on the roster. On this roster, he's a unicorn. They don't have anybody like him. If they added another 6 foot, 195-pound guy that's good route runner, good hands, good athlete, like he might get lost in the shuffle because they got like 9 of those. They don't have anybody else like him. So, and nothing happened this spring to make you think like that guy may take some minutes away from Malachi. That didn't happen either. So he's not going to get lost in the shuffle. He's not at all.
No.
I did go back and watch that though, because I was like, did we really talk a lot? I mean, did we really? And we went back and listened to it, and like, yeah, we did. We were like, yeah, this guy's really good. Imagine if he had a really good quarterback. We actually said that. Like, imagine if this guy had a really good quarterback. I'd be a lot more worried about him.
Adam Garcia, what do you guys think is the ceiling of CJ Carr and Kenny Minchey, and who would be the best comparison for the two of them?
I've been asked the one about Joe Burrow or CJ Carr before, and I've said this, it is not predicting equal statistics or equal draft placement, but I said as far as comparing their skill set and body type, I still say that Joe Burrow is the best example for CJ Carr. Good arm strength, but not elite. Great mind, great ball placement, smart, knows how to make plays, not afraid to use the athleticism to, go be effective and make plays. There's a lot to like there in that regard. So that's still my comp for him. And it's the one I used for him coming out of high school. So I see nothing to make me back out of it now. My comp for Kenny Minchey's a little bit different now because he's shown more running ability, but I don't know that I've got a better one. My comp for Kenny Minchey coming out of high school was Baker Mayfield. No, not the biggest guy in the world. He's taller than Baker, but just live arm, gamer, not just sit back in the pocket, go through your progressions and just pick teams apart. Baker was a gamer in college, man. Like he'd scramble around and throw on the run, and he had some swagger to him, and you just real live arm. And so that was my comparison for him. Again, I'm not saying he's going to have the same career that Baker Mayfield had. It's more about comparing body type and skill set. Some guys with the same body type and skill set are average college quarterbacks. Some turn out to be great. It's more comparing the skill set, but those are the two best for me as far as comparing the skill set. Now, you talk about the ceiling of two of them, Trev. I think both of them are capable of being national championship caliber quarterbacks. And not just that they ride the bus, but they drive the bus of a national championship football team. CJ more so than Kenny, but both of them have that ability. The draft is tonight, right? So if you want me to use an example of the difference in their ceiling, if they both reach their full potential, I think CJ Carr has top 10 NFL draft pick talent. I think if Kenny Minchey reaches his full potential, I think he's a second round type of football player. Like in a real draft, not we're going to take a bunch of second rounders in round one because we overinflate the positional value. I'm talking about like how the quarterback position used to be. Like Drew Brees was the first pick of the second round when he got drafted. In today's era, Drew Brees is without a doubt a top 15 to 20 draft pick. Like no questions asked. The way that they overdraft now. Like I'm still tripping on how did Lamar Jackson fall as hard as he did. Like in today's era, I don't think he falls that far. If Justin Fields went number 3, how does Lamar Jackson go number 32? But whatever. Different conversation for a different day. But in a real, like, just value is not as trumped as it is now. I think Kenny's a second-round caliber player. That's still really good. CJ is a top 10 caliber NFL draft pick, in my opinion, if he reaches his full potential. Is that fair to express the difference? Both of those type of talents are capable of winning a championship at the University of Notre Dame.
Yeah, that's completely fair. I am Tenzin. What's worse, being extremely early or being extremely late?
Being late.
Oh, yeah. Salty Virginia Peanuts. Will I be Show?
Sorry. Stop asking that question, Salty.
Good deal. Ronnie Reeves. With the recent ruling that walk-ons will be allowed, how does that affect the Notre Dame roster and any possible portal transfers?
Well, I think and we talked about this a little bit, I think it impacts the walk-ons a ton. Because as we were asked the other day, one of the bias to holds, Trev, was more scholarship guys will be impacted by this than walk-on guys. And I said, no, actually, I think it'll be more walk-on guys who are going to have to get run off than scholarship guys. With this ruling, I think they are incredibly impacted by this to where now you don't have to get rid of anybody. If nobody wants to transfer, Notre Dame doesn't have to get rid of anybody. So I think that's a great place to be for all. I mean, if you're Charles Dew, if you're Mickey Brown, if you're like, and that doesn't include Matt Jeffrey, who was on the football team in the fall, but isn't on it the spring because he's playing lacrosse. He was a highly ranked, like, elite lacrosse player as well. And he's I think a freshman on the lacrosse team this year who's very good. And that's not me giving you my opinion. That's me telling you what people that are part of that program have told me. He's very good. And so, he'd be in a tough spot for being able to be on the team in the fall. With Robbie Wallen and Max Anderson, you got to cut one of those guys. Now you don't have to worry about it. You can have them on the team and they can help you. So I'm ecstatic that's going down, and I hope that is how it pans out, because all those kids, you talk about true student athletes. All these other players, well, I don't get enough money. I'm like, These kids are paying they're paying to go to school and be part of the football team. They're not getting paid. They are paying to go to school at Notre Dame and be part of this football team. And that's who we were going to punish. So I'm glad that we're not there now. Very happy.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go here.
From Old Jarhead, with all the recruiting hype around Jadon Blair coming in, where do you all see him on the depth chart?
I think he's in the 2 deep, battling by the end of the year, battling for numbers like starter reps, numbers, snaps. Like, I don't know that he will start. There's no need to rush it, but I'll be a little surprised if he's not in the top 4 by the time we get to the fall. What are your thoughts, Trev?
I think you're going to see a lot of oars on Notre Dame's defensive depth chart this year. I would not look
3 levels.
Yes.
1, 2, and 3. Yeah, I agree.
I would on the defensive line, in the safety room. Don't be surprised. Well, this is what the depth chart says. And on the lines, it says he's 4th. It's like, look, man, it's or. It is very much an or. I could see it being at the start of the year. I could see it being like, Adon Schuler and Luke Talich in the first team. And then it's, Jalen Stroman or Tay Johnson or Jadon Blair. And really, you're just listing out your 2A, 2B, 2C players, and all of them are going to play, or any combination of what those are. And so you saw that a lot on the defensive line last year. It was a lot of ors, especially as the season progressed and people started getting injured, So, there was one week where I think it wasn't even like it would be like RJ Oben or Bryce Young or Junior Tuialamaka or some combination of that. They didn't even list like a 1 or a 2 and then list ors. So it's going to be a lot of that because they're loaded with talent. It's a great problem to have, but he's definitely going to be on it and he's definitely going to be playing.
And unlike last year, they're going to actually be legitimate ors.
Yes.
There was a couple last year okay, that dude started every game at safety. Why are we still listing him as an or?
Mm-hmm.
It's not an or. That guy's a starter. Let's stop with this. What you're saying, and I agree with this, it's going to be a lot of ors that are legitimate ors. D tackle, D end, will linebacker, boundary safety or field safety. Z receiver, the Z at receiver is 1. Yeah. And then the 2 and 3s are where you're going to see a ton of them also.
Yeah.
In my opinion. Yeah. I'm going to ask this one of you, Trev. This is an interesting one because I think I talked a lot more about this yesterday. I want to get your thoughts on it. Salty asks, if Carr winds up quarterback 1, what would a Minchie package look like and how often per game would it be employed? So let's not debate whether you need it or don't need it. We had that debate the other day. I want to get your thoughts on what you think a Minchie package would look like in your view, and then when would you think it should be or would be employed?
Yeah, for a Minchie package, I think it would be situational. Either down and distance or in the red zone. And I know the popular answer is to go with the red zone. What I think it should be is more for third down scenarios, because when you look at it, there's nothing that Kenny Minchie provides you in the red zone from an arm or leg standpoint that you wouldn't have on the field with Jeremiah Love, Jadarian Price, Kedron Young, CJ Carr. But where I think it could get interesting is Notre Dame ran a lot of QB power and QB counter on 3rd and short last year. You implement one of those, your line blocks it the same. Call it 3rd and 1 or 3rd and 2 on maybe your own 40. Kenny lines up to run a QB counter. And then right before he hits the hole, he takes a couple steps back and hits somebody over the top. I would actually really like to see that more so than the red zone, because there's limited things you can do from a passing standpoint in the red zone as far as Kenny has a bazooka of an arm. It's that's cool, man. You're on the 7.
Yeah.
Let's
see if he can hit the scoreboard.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see if he can hit the top of the left crossbar. Look, man, I would love something like that on a third, because again, you start talking about tendencies. and you start talking about, okay, well, it's the red zone. Hey, guys, 8's coming in. It's going to be read zone, QB counter, QB draw, something like that, maybe an occasional screen. But you do that on down and distance, I think that would be pretty lethal. So, Salty, to answer your question, that's what I think it could look like.
That's cool, bro. You're on the 7.
Kenny has a rope, and it's like, dude, you have like this far to go.
That's awesome. Cool, bro. You're on the 7. It doesn't matter. That's kind of how they use Buckner in 2021, Travis. They wouldn't just put him in the red zone. They just put him in to start a series.
Yep.
I don't see that Marcus Freeman doing that, but I actually think that'd be the best thing to really utilize Kenny is putting him in situations where he can run and throw, because he's not Tyler Buckner as an athlete or as a runner. He may be what Tyler Buckner was as an athlete. I still don't think he is. But he's not the runner Tyler was. So I just don't know how that impacts it. But so I think if you are going to have a Kenny package, I do think something like that would be, just sort of as a change of pace. Let's, it's almost kind of like the reverse of what they did in 2014 in the Music City Bowl.
Yeah.
Where if Everett were to have started and then you bring in Malik for a series and he does the stuff he did, it'd be more similar to that than like a red zone short yardage package. I love Kenny Minchie to death, but if I got an option between to give him the ball or to give the ball to Jeremiah Love or Kedron Young or Jadarian Price on 3rd and 1, I'm going to give it to them. It's a different animal if Riley Leonard was here.
Yep.
Riley Leonard was really good at that. I don't know that Kenny is. He didn't do it a lot in high school. And I don't care how athletic you are. Just because you're athletic doesn't mean that you are a runner or a natural runner or have great vision as a runner. Doesn't mean that at all. Good answer. I was very curious about that. I like this one.
From Scott L. In 2025, will any one Notre Dame wide receiver surpass the production of Greathouse plus Faison plus Collins plus Chris Mitchell in 2024? So an 1,000-yard receiver.
I mean, that's like one guy having more production than all of them combined.
Assuming.
Is that what I'm reading?
Yeah,
okay? If they have a guy that does that, so he said Greathouse, Collins, Mitchell, and who else? Is it just those 3?
Greathouse, Faison, Collins, and Mitchell.
Faison?
I mean, okay. I have to assume you're leaving receptions out of this conversation.
So that guy would have 135 receptions, and he'd have, let's see here, Faison 356, and then that guy to have 135 catches for 1,662 yards and let's see, 7, 8, 10 touchdowns. That guy's winning the Biletnikoff and is like shattering records.
And probably going to New York.
Yeah. So the answer, no, they won't. If you're to say, like, do I expect guys, like I expect Jaden Greathouse to surpass his own level of production from last season. I expect Jordan Faison to surpass his level of production next year. Because I still want to address sort of what he's getting at, which is, obviously you want to see a jump in receiver production. I believe that Malachi Fields will have a significant improvement over Bo Collins' production last year. Not all of this is because of the receiver. Some of it's because the offense is going to look different with a different quarterback. I don't know that Bo Collins to me is not putting up Malachi Fields' numbers with CJ Carr quarterback, but he certainly would have put up better numbers, I think, than he put up last year. Same with Chris Mitchell. And I think Will Pauling has better numbers than Chris Mitchell. Like, Mitchell might be the guy more than anybody else with a different quarterback would have had the bigger jump. Like, he would have had a much different year with a different quarterback.
Agreed.
The issue that I had with this group is, like, Collins had his share of drops in games, and Mitchell didn't have any really drops in games, but he had a lot of drops in practice. And I wonder if that factored into maybe why there wasn't a lot of confidence in him. But never had that issue in games that I can remember. I don't remember him dropping a single pass last year. I'm sure he did, but I just don't remember it.
Crash this train. Which Notre Dame player in the last 5 years, including this year, could you see becoming a head coach in the future?
last 5 years. So that'd be 24, 23, 22, 21, 20. Jack Cohn, Riley Leonard for sure. Like Riley Leonard gives me like Lance Harbor vibes. You know what I mean? Like you remember from the Varsity Blues?
Oh yeah.
Where he was a quarterback, but then he ends up becoming a high school head football coach. I could so see Riley Leonard. Like we find out, like where have you been? Where have you gone? And they're like Riley Leonard's now like the head high school football coach at his old high school. So I'm like, you know what I mean? Like he gives me those because he like seems like he really cares about kids. He loves football and he very much has those kind of like high school head football coach vibes to me. Some other guys to think about. Oh boy. I mean, pick a linebacker that's played the last 5. I mean, J.D. Bertrand. I mean, would it shock you if Maris Leofau's back out in Hawaii as a head coach at his high school someday? No. Jack Kaiser. Like, Jack might be at the top of my – see, here's the problem with a lot of these guys. They strike me as future football coaches, but Jack Kaiser's got like a bachelor's and like 2 masters from Notre Dame. He's going to make a lot more money than what he would be doing as a high school football coach. You know what I mean? But like, if it wasn't for that, he strikes me as a guy that, you know, is a head high school football coach or a college coach. I mean, it doesn't just have to be, you know, I don't mean that disrespectfully. I mean, that's actually a compliment for me because I didn't have the temperament to really be a high school coach. Like I interviewed for a head coaching job at IC Norcom High School. I was one of the 2 finalists. I didn't get it. But I look back, I'm actually kind of glad that they should have hired me, first of all, because I was way better candidate than the guy they hired. But I'm glad they didn't because I don't know that I had the temperament to really deal with high school with, you know, administrators and parents and stuff like that. I just don't know that I had the temperament for that. But like some of these guys do, and that's a term of endearment for me. I respect high school coaches that are like legitimate, like good high school football coaches, not guys that are like, I'm here to use this as a stepping stone to go here, but like guys that like have a passion for young people and coaching at that level. And like, I have a great deal of respect for them because it's not easy coaching in high school because you have to deal with stuff that I can just be like, dude, I'm not dealing with that. This is college football. If your mama wants to complain about your playing time, you can just tell her to stay like over there because I'm not dealing with that. You can come to me. High school's different. It's just a lot different. So I respect the heck out of high school football coaches. I really do. So I'm just trying to think of some more guys. Anybody pop off your head? I mean, some of the DBs they've had in past years would like I could see Benjamin Morrison being a football coach someday. Just so smart and technically sound. Like his football career's over and like he's following a Mike Mickens, Aaron Glenn type of path someday to being a coach. Smart kid, leader, you know, all that kind of stuff. He could be one. I could see him being that kind of guy. Drake Bowen on the current team, you know, Kingston. A lot of these guys are just high football IQ guys that are just tough with character. I mean, Josh Burnham, Junior Tulamaka. I mean, there's a lot of guys that I think could be that. Pat Coogan, probably the first one that stands out to me on the O-line was probably Pat Coogan.
Yeah.
You know, just rah-rah guy, smart, knows the game, tough. I could see him being an O-line coach someday. Yeah, for sure. Robert Hainsey, he was on the 2020 team. I could see Robert Hainsey being an O-line coach someday, for sure. A lot of those type of guys. So it's a pretty good list. Anybody else that I missed, Trev?
Jordan Clark. I'd see him being one. Yeah, nobody outside of the players you mentioned.
Here's an interesting from Salty. Here we go.
If you were to switch one Irish player from offense to defense, who would it be to which position?
From offense to defense, who would I switch? Like if I had to switch somebody, who would I switch? It would, if healthy, it'd be Cooper Flanagan to defensive end. If he was still healthy. The other incoming Flanagan, James Flanagan, is also a really good defensive end. Like could play Division I football at that position. Like if Notre Dame had depth issues on the D line, let's like legitimate, like our DN position is in trouble. Like, we got to move our version of Myron Tungavaloa-Mosa out to DN because we're struggling on numbers. Guy that's been a 4-year player at D tackle for us. We got to move out to DN because we're numbers. I would say no, leave Myron at D tackle. Let's move Cooper Flanagan over to D end if he was healthy. He was pretty good defensive end in high school. Like, could play at this level to some degree. Same with James Flanagan. That'd be one of those two. Anybody else kind of – there aren't a ton of guys on offense that played both ways in high school.
All of my answers aren't even, like, applicable. Like, there's no scenarios like, if this happens, like, I just think it'd be cool to see. Dude, I bet Jeremiah Love would be a nasty defensive back.
He was in high school.
Yeah, I think
there were teams that recruited him as a corner.
Yeah, I think he'd be pretty nice there.
Yeah. Cam Williams is a pretty good DB in high school. Micah Gilbert was as well. He's pretty good. He was pretty good safety in high school. 30 years ago, Keedron Young's playing middle linebacker for me.
Yeah.
30 years ago, not anymore. But 30 years ago, he would have been. Back when I was young. Yeah. He also asked this. I think this one will be a little easier, Trev. Salty also asked, if you were to switch one Irish player from defense to offense, who would it be and which position? I can guess the first name that comes to like 90% of the chat's mind, and it's going to be Dallas Golden. That's going to be the first guy. Just about everybody on the chat's going to probably be like, what about Dallas Golden, the wide receiver? I get that. I'd probably be my pick.
I put Jadon Blair at wide receiver.
That's a good. They kind of did that a little bit. Dallas could do so many different things. He could play corner, safety. He could do so many different things. Somebody said KVA to fullback. Yeah, I mean, they did with Manti 2011. Of course, on that play, it resulted in a fumble. They got returned 99 yards for a touchdown, but hey, they did it.
Let's see. Another fun one, just put Leonard Moore at field receiver and just let him run goes.
There you go. He was a pretty good receiver in high school. Christian Gray is a pretty good receiver in high school. There's a lot more defensive guys that played offense. That's something that the defensive staff – Drake Bowen, you're talking about fullbacks?
Oh, yeah.
How about Drake Bowen as your power back? If you didn't have Keedron Young and you needed a power back, hey, 34. Let's go back to your Mr. Football days when you ran for almost 1,800 yards as a senior in high school. How about that? How about them apples? I could see that. There used to be, I mean, we saw one already happen. Devin Houston already happened. So that one already kind of went down that way. No other linebackers. I mean, Preston's entered a tight end. That one actually is the one that I think would make the most sense for this actual team. I still say that. I still say the one that actually makes the most sense. Not like having fun on a Thursday show. Like, these are fun questions that Salty's asking. Like, they're not really like, that's the one that I still say is the one that is most likely should happen is to move him over to H-back. Kind of like tight end H-back type of guy. I still feel that way. Yeah, that'd be mine. And speaking of that, I am Tenzin. Are you confident now with Zenner getting meaningful snaps now that he has shown as a Russian? No, not really. I mean, he doesn't get those snaps in the blue gold game if Jordan Patelho and Boubacar Traore and Logan Thomas are playing. I'm not saying that's right or, you know, but that's just the reality of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. We did this one, right?
Yep.
Okay, let's get to this one here.
With Gerby Lambert expected to return in fall camp, how realistically can he push for a starting spot if cleared fully from injury?
In week one, it's unlikely. I mean, it was going to be tough for him to do that anyway because Joe Rudolph loves Anthony Knapp. It was going to be hard, but it's even harder now. It's going to require somebody to struggle or get hurt right now. I'm not saying that's fair, not saying that's right, but that's just what I think it is. It's going to require an injury to happen to open up that opportunity because he wasn't able to finish the season, the spring off. I think it's kind of like the excuse that was needed. Say, this is why we're going to go with what we're going to go with. That's my 2 cents.
I'm with you. Another one from Salty. What do you expect to see from Carson Hobbs this season? And is there any chance IB will host a Carson's Corner segment anytime soon?
No, there isn't. What do I expect from Carson Hobbs this season? I mean, I think he's going to be a very important rotation player. I don't think he's going to be based on where things are right now, I don't think Carson is the number 2 boundary or number 2 field. I think he's the next corner off the board, on the field. Like if there's a starter goes down, I think Carson's the guy right now that steps in either spot.
Yeah.
Actually, you could argue all 3.
Yeah.
Field, boundary, or nickel. If a starter goes down, I think Carson Hobbs is that next guy. But he's also going to play. I think you're going to see him rotate in early in the season like we did see with Leonard Moore last year and Christian Gray the year before, where they don't want those corners to play every single snap either. They kind of had to last year. But remember the year before when Christian Gray was healthy, he rotated almost every game.
Yeah, he did.
And last year we saw Leonard Moore getting playing time off the bench, even against A&M. He was getting on the field against A&M. So Mike Mickens is no different than every other coach on the team. He'd like to have at least a 3-man rotation at that position. He'd like to.
Yep. It's
just he's not going to put a guy out there just to put him out there, especially when you get into the postseason. Like Leonard Moore played 5 snaps against Texas A&M. You know what's funny is the only game that Leonard Moore didn't play on defense last year. Do you know what game that was?
Northern Illinois.
It's the only game Leonard Moore didn't play last year. So Leonard Moore did not lose a college football game as a guy that played on defense until the championship game. So yeah, but no, Carson will be a very important part of that deal.
Mm-hmm.
So Trevor, I believe that is it. Oh, here we go. Christopher Galloway said he said he had to use a post. He was using his avatar from a different thing, so that's why he had us. So he's back. He's back.
We're so
the
back.
IB hat back. All is right in the world once again, my friend. All is right in the world once again. So Trev, I believe that is going to do it. Here's a comment, not really from a question, but a comment. But I also want to bring Tom up because I believe Tom is making this post from the hospital. So our buddy Tom has been in the hospital the last few days. My wife and I, we're praying for Tom. I'd ask all of you to continue to pray for Tom and pray for wisdom for the doctors that are working on him, that they can kind of find some answers to some of the things he's dealing with. But Tom, we're thinking about you and praying for you. But also Tom says, he had a comment that I think is a great way to end this, Trev. And I think it's very fitting to the conversation we were having before the mailbag. Tom says, the overall talent upgrade at every position in Notre Dame in the last 3 years is what we had waited for 3 decades. And that is an absolute fact. I think that's the thing that makes a show like today challenging from I don't know, I feel kind of dumb ranking this group where I am because they're so good, but also is take the rankings aside and just if we were just evaluating the position groups, it's what gets you so excited about not just the 2025 football team, but just the direction that Marcus Freeman has taken this thing. It really is exciting to think about that. It really is.
I think you said that perfectly, man. Said that perfectly, Tom. We're all pulling for you. Hope you get better. But I think you ended the show perfectly, man. So that's going to do it for us today on the Irish Breakdown podcast. But before you get out of here, folks, please be sure to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell. Share this podcast with your friends and family, anybody that you know loves Notre Dame and college football as much as you do. Whatever platform you watch us on, we would greatly appreciate a 5-star review, whether that's Spotify podcast, Apple podcast, whatever platform you listen on. But as always, the best way to support what we do here is subscribe to the premium message boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com. Brian and I will be back tomorrow on Friday for our Friday free-for-all mailbag. So if you had some questions that you were kind of holding off on until tomorrow, please be sure to throw those in the chat. So until tomorrow at 1, that's Brian. I'm Trevor. We'll see you back here very soon on the Irish Breakdown podcast.